Chapter 371, The Deceived Mr. Lovegood Successfully Taught Supreme Magic. Blake waited patiently until they both had a ring. Then, with a sense of anticipation, he began, "Now, I will let you experience the sensation of a spatial rift." Pausing, he added, "By the way, I also want to feel the magical power." As Blake's thoughts delved into the depths of his consciousness, the environment around them transformed dramatically, as if by a giant projector. Suddenly, Cassandra and the others found themselves in a colorful, surreal world. In a corner of this bizarre landscape, a peculiar crack caught their attention. Within the depths of this rift, darkness loomed, yet from these cracks, a golden power slowly seeped out. Time seemed to stand still in this strange world. When the illusion finally vanished, Cassandra and the others were brought back to reality, finding themselves in their original surroundings. Meanwhile, Eyebrow, oblivious to the fantastical vision, busily stuffed gold galleons into the 607 bag on his stomach, casting curious glances at the group standing before him in a daze. Blake announced, "Okay, you should have felt the power." Luna, with a dreamy expression, inquired, "It's so beautiful. Where is that place?" "I don't know either," Blake admitted, "but when you want to use this kind of power, you must first visualize the crack in your mind." Following this, Blake methodically taught them the steps to open a dimensional door. 2 hours later, the group transitioned from standing to practicing while seated, a change that surprised Blake. He had thought this magic would be simpler than the hidden mist curse, yet Cassandra and the others struggled to grasp it despite their prolonged effort. "Hey, could it be that my teaching method is flawed?" Blake pondered, scratching his head. Hermione and the others felt somewhat silly continuously drawing circles with their hands, but they refrained from voicing any complaints to avoid discouraging Blake. Despite their patience, Blake grew increasingly frustrated with their lack of progress, suspecting he might have overlooked a crucial detail. Perhaps the issue lay with the rings? Deciding to halt the practice for the day, Blake announced, "Let's stop here for today." Suddenly, a spark appeared in front of Blake, drawing everyone's attention to Luna. Surprised by her own success, Luna received Blake's enthusiastic encouragement. "Luna, keep going. Don't stop. Focus and visualize your destination, and remember that beautiful place we saw." As Luna concentrated, more sparks appeared, eventually forming a circle. The space within this circle of sparks began to distort, signaling the formation of a dimensional gate. "Come on," Blake urged, and with a final spark, the dimensional gate fully materialized. On the other side, Mr. Lovegood was enjoying his meal when he spotted Luna through the gate. The pumpkin pie in his hand dropped onto the plate in surprise. "Luna, okay, you succeeded. Next, it's easy," Blake continued, ignoring Mr. Lovegood's astonishment. "As long as you focus on maintaining it, the gate will stay open. If you want to close it, just close it." Luna nodded, slowly ceasing her hand movements. The dimensional door wobbled, but remained stable. Blake's face lit up with excitement. This was a momentous occasion, the first successful use of supreme magic by someone in this world. Luna then turned to her father. "Dad, can you give me the latest issue of the Quibbler?" "Oh, of course." Mr. Lovegood, still puzzled by the events but not questioning further, hurried to a table, picked up a new magazine, and handed it through the dimensional door to Luna. At the Wykind gate, Luna's eyes sparkled with excitement as she grasped the magazine. "I got it!" she exclaimed, turning to Blake with the magazine triumphantly raised. Her successful acquisition of the magazine from Mr. Lovegood was a clear sign that their venture into the dimensional gate had been a complete success. "Congratulations, Luna!" The group erupted into applause. Even Mr. Lovegood, who stood in his magazine office, looked on in bewilderment but managed a hesitant clap. "Dad, thank you for the magazine. Goodbye," Luna called out, waving. The dimensional door before her vanished instantly. Goodbye," Mr. Lovegood replied, still waving in confusion. After a moment of pondering the strange occurrence, he decided to dismiss it and return to his pumpkin pie. Luna's initial success made her subsequent attempts much smoother. She effortlessly opened a dimensional door to her bedroom, retrieved a bookmark, and returned to the training ground. Her achievement sparked envy among Cassandra and the others, who longed for the ability to traverse great distances at will. Hermione felt a twinge of regret. She recalled a moment atop a mountain with Blake, where he had offered to teach her this magic, but she had declined. However, learning from one another proved to be more effective than Blake's instruction, given his unique experience with magic. Blake had never undergone the learning process for supreme magic. He had achieved mastery instantly. As a result, Blake found himself sidelined, amusing himself by teasing the minister while the others exchanged tips and experiences. Luna's breakthrough inspired the group, and soon Cassandra and the others also mastered the dimensional door. This skill, initially daunting, became easier with practice. Blake then showed them how to use the dimensional gate to locate someone. By the time they had honed their skills, the sky was speckled with stars, making the magic seem even more fascinating than the hidden mist curse. So engrossed were they that even Nagini, usually so dependable, forgot about cooking. With no further need for his guidance, Blake took it upon himself to prepare dinner, allowing the girls to continue their exploration of the dimensional door. This rapid learning curve led Blake to ponder whether the borrowed power negated the need for repayment, enabling them to learn supreme magic at an accelerated pace. If they could master other supreme magics just as quickly, they would gain significant power to protect themselves and become valuable allies. Buoyed by this thought, Blake's spirits lifted, contemplating the potential of having several powerful helpers at his side. Chapter 372, Snape, There is no good person in your family. Lately, Snape found himself wrestling with irritation more than usual. The root of his frustration was Blake, who had unexpectedly altered his plans, compelling Snape to venture into Nocturne Alley not once, but twice in a short span, to complete tasks for Chaos Wish. After waiting impatiently for half a month to submit his task, Snape hurried to find Blake, assuming it was the ideal time to commence their experiment. Yet, to his dismay, Blake hadn't even started. Worse still, Blake claimed he was too occupied to begin, as he had taken it upon himself to train some young witches in dueling. Snape's temper flared at this revelation. However, Blake managed to quell his anger with a single question, asking if Snape would forsake a rare opportunity to teach Lily dueling skills alone, should Dumbledore seek his attention at the same moment. Snape admitted he wouldn't, acknowledging he'd ignore anyone, even Voldemort, for such a chance. Blake's response was a mix of mockery and insight. He pointed out Snape's singular obsession with Lily, contrasting it with his own broader affections. This only served to infuriate Snape further, who felt his dedication to Lily was being trivialized. Despite their bickering, Blake assured Snape he would fulfill his promise before the holiday's end, which somewhat pacified Snape. Yet, as Snape was about to leave, Blake cheekily suggested Snape could assist him by submitting the task, arguing it would save both of their time. Reluctantly, Snape agreed, driven by a mix of duty and the fear that Blake might abandon their project. After completing the errand for Blake, Snape returned to his office at Hogwarts, spending his days in a state of anxious anticipation, punctuated by daily reminder letters to Blake. During this tense waiting period, Dumbledore sought Snape out, expressing surprise at finding him at Hogwarts during the holidays. Snape's response was curt, his patience thin, especially when Dumbledore mentioned the task concerned Harry Potter. Snape's complex feelings towards Harry, fueled by the boy's resemblance to James yet also to Lily, made him particularly sensitive to any mention of the boy. Dumbledore explained the urgency of the situation, mentioning Sirius Black's escape from prison and the need to protect Harry, which involved deploying numerous people discreetly around the boy. Arthur Weasley had also promised to ensure Harry's safety. Snape's reaction was a mix of reluctance and duty, his feelings towards Harry complicated by his enduring love for Lily and his disdain for James. Despite his reservations, Snape understood the gravity of the situation and the need to protect Harry, if only for Lily's sake. "Isn't this a good arrangement? Then what else do you wish to discuss with me?" Dumbledore asked as he pulled up a chair and sat down. "Today, I've come to you for 2 reasons," he began. "The first matter concerns Harry. I'm aware of your past conflicts with Sirius and others. However, I believe that sometimes an individual's enemy knows them better than their friends. Given your history with Sirius, especially regarding the accusations of betrayal towards Lily's family, your animosity towards him is profound. Snape, with a sneer, interjected, "So you're asking me to secretly protect Potter?" He was well aware of Sirius's reputation, and thus anticipated Dumbledore's request. "Only you can give me peace of mind, Severus. Sirius has vanished without a trace since his escape, and it's unsettling," Dumbledore expressed his concern. Snape remained silent for a moment before nodding in agreement. "Considering Blake hasn't contacted me yet, and all I've been doing is waiting, I might as well protect Potter. I'll just avoid looking at his face. His eyes will suffice." "And the second matter?" Snape inquired, standing up to pour Dumbledore a cup of tea. "The second issue is about the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor for the next term. Remember," Dumbledore continued, causing Snape's expression to darken. "I reckon Lull applying for that position several times. Why have you never approved my application?" Dumbledore responded warmly. "The subject of potions is crucial, and you are the finest potions professor I've ever known, Severus. I believe you are more suited to remain as the potions professor than to switch to Defense Against the Dark Arts." Despite Dumbledore's praise, Snape felt a sting of disappointment. He believed himself to be equally skilled in Defense Against the Dark Arts. "I wouldn't mind teaching both subjects for the price of one. The school could save on a salary. Perhaps you could reconsider?" Snape suggested, making a final attempt. "That would be too demanding on you. I cannot justify overworking an excellent professor just to save on expenses." Dumbledore declined once more. "Very well," Snape conceded, understanding that the Defense Against the Dark Arts position would not be his the following year. "Who have you chosen for the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor? Surely not another Gilderoy Lockhart." Dumbledore, touching his beard sheepishly, assured, "I won't repeat the mistake of choosing someone like Lockhart. Rest assured, the candidate I've selected is highly proficient in Defense Against the Dark Arts." "And who might that be?" Snape pressed, curiosity piqued. After a sip of tea, Dumbledore hesitated before revealing softly, "Remus John Lupin." The cup in Snape's hand clattered onto the table as he stood up abruptly. "Who? Who did you say?" he demanded, his face contorted with anger. Dumbledore, relieved he had finished his tea before the outburst, repeated, "It's Remus John Lupin." "I know who he is, Dumbledore. He's a werewolf," Snape exclaimed, outraged. "How could you possibly consider appointing a werewolf as a professor?" Snape's voice trailed off, his facial muscles twitching as if recalling a horrifying memory. He would never forget his encounters with Remus John Lupin, who was part of James Potter's infamous group. Snape, as their adversary, had always been suspicious of Lupin's monthly disappearances, which coincided with the full moon. Despite his suspicions of a conspiracy, Snape had quietly followed them, seeking to uncover their secrets. Then, on one fateful full moon night, he followed Sirius, hoping to expose their clandestine activities. However, Sirius had already detected his presence. Following Sirius, Snape was deliberately led to the secret passage beneath the Homping Willow. There, he encountered the most horrifying sight of his life: a werewolf, transformed from Remus John Lupin. Had James not pulled him out of the passage in time, Snape might have perished under the claws of the frenzied Lupin. What compounded Snape's torment was the fact that his savior was none other than his nemesis, James Potter. Bearing such a harrowing memory, it was unthinkable to Snape that Dumbledore would now propose hiring Remus John Lupin, the very creature that nearly ended his life, as a professor. Moreover, to consider him for the Defense Against the Dark Arts position, which Snape coveted, was beyond infuriating. Dumbledore, anticipating Snape's reaction, nevertheless expressed his need for Snape's cooperation. "I come to you with another request," Dumbledore began, to which Snape, with a scowl, responded, "You want me to brew wolfsbane potion for him, don't you?" The potion, costly to make, allows a werewolf to retain their mind during transformation, posing no threat to others if they seclude themselves during the ordeal. Essential for Lupin to safely teach at Hogwarts, Dumbledore's request was indeed for Snape to brew this potion. Sigh. "Severus, I understand your reluctance, but Remus John is genuinely the most suitable candidate for this role," Dumbledore explained. "His valor against the Death Eaters as a member of the Order of the Phoenix speaks to his strength and suitability for the position. Moreover, his struggles due to his werewolf condition have not been easy. He needs this job, and given his contributions to peace, it's unjust to continue treating him poorly. Why? Snape's gaze upon Dumbledore was icy. He knew the decision was final. Lupin, a key figure in the Order of the Phoenix and one of Dumbledore's trusted allies, was struggling, and Dumbledore, true to his character, would not stand by idly. "You always do this, Dumbledore," Snape remarked bitterly. "But you are the headmaster, and your decision is made. What right do I have to object?" Despite his discomfort, Snape was almost resigned to his fate. Protecting the son of the man who won the heart of his beloved, brewing potions for his adversaries, and undertaking tasks he despised. He had grown accustomed to it. However, in his moments of misery, Snape's thoughts drifted to Blake. Unlike Dumbledore, who only issued orders, Blake rewarded him for his efforts, offering shares in a store, dividends as a bounty hunter, and even promising to assist in creating a daughter through biotechnology. This stark contrast made Dumbledore's requests even more irksome. "I understand. Please leave. I will go to Diagon Alley today to covertly protect Potter," Snape conceded, his voice laced with resignation. "I will also brew the Wolfsbane potion. As for Lupin, I will do my best to keep my distance and avoid conflict." With Snape's pale face signaling his displeasure, Dumbledore knew better than to prolong his stay. Unlike Blake, who enticed Snape with tangible rewards, Dumbledore's requests were becoming increasingly burdensome, a fact that did not escape Snape's bitter reflection. Severus Snape would undoubtedly be displeased with the decision to appoint Remus John Lupin as the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. "I'm sorry, Severus, but I must proceed with this decision," Dumbledore said, his tone final. After imparting those words, he turned and exited Snape's dimly lit underground classroom, leaving a palpable tension in the air. Snape, left alone, closed the door with a forceful slam. He leaned against the cool wood, allowing himself a moment of silent frustration. "Tsk, your family has never been on the right side of things," he muttered under his breath, his words laced with anger and disdain. Time passed as Snape stood there, lost in his thoughts, until he managed to compose himself. With a deep breath, he reopened the door and stepped out of the classroom, the shadows of the corridor swallowing his figure. P.S. Today I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me, only to discover it was due to high blood pressure. Have I really reached the age where high blood pressure becomes a concern? Chapter 373, Snape, where can I find a wet nurse? Stab it! Sparks flew in all directions as a dimensional portal materialized directly in Blake's room. A little girl in a green dress leaped through. "Blake, wake up! What are we going to train today?" At that moment, Blake, clutching his quilt to his chest, was curled up by the bed, eyeing Cassandra warily. "Don't you think it's a bit inappropriate to just show up like this?" he protested. Cassandra placed her hands on her hips, unfazed. "What's the problem? You've popped into my room suddenly before, haven't you?" She chided him. "Get up! The sun's about to shine on your butt. Sister Nagini has had breakfast ready for ages. If you don't get up soon, it'll be cold." As Cassandra reached for Blake's quilt, he protested. No, don't pull." He struggled to keep the quilt in place. "It was hot last night, so I slept without clothes. It's a bit awkward now." "Awkward? If it's that difficult, let's not bother then. Besides, what does it matter if a boy is seen?" Cassandra retorted, pulling at the quilt with more force. Blake suspected she was doing this on purpose. Despite her earlier reassurances, she now seemed determined to unveil him. "I'm getting up, really. Can you step outside first?" Blake pleaded. "Why should I leave?" Cassandra smirked, enjoying the moment. Blake mentally cursed, calling her a female gangster. In an instant, his figure vanished from the bed. When Cassandra dropped the quilt and turned to see the empty bed, she was puzzled. Then, a cough from behind her made her spin around, only to find Blake standing there, fully dressed. "All right, let's go. Didn't you say breakfast is ready?" Blake said, adjusting his clothes, which had been transformed by the levitating cloak. "What did you?" Cassandra looked back and forth between the bed and Blake, confused. "This isn't a dimensional gate. It's just apparition. Let's go," Blake replied calmly. His mastery of apparition, though rarely used due to the discomfort it caused, had come in handy to escape Cassandra's teasing. Boys have to protect themselves too, he thought, following her out of the room. As they walked, Blake regretted teaching them about the dimensional gate. Their ability to come and go as they pleased in his room could lead to awkward situations in the future. No, I must find a way to prevent this, he pondered. They soon arrived at the dining room, where Nagini, upon seeing Blake, went to the kitchen to bring out breakfast. Newt and Tina had already left for work, leaving only a few girls in the dining area. "What are we training for today?" Hermione asked, setting aside the Daily Prophet. Blake took a bite of a soft honey cake. "No training today." "Huh, if we're not training, what will we do?" Hermione inquired. "We're going to Diagon Alley," Blake announced, pulling out several letters. After discarding Snape's daily reminder letters, he distributed the remaining ones among the girls, 2 envelopes each. "Your parents have written," he explained, "and here's the letter from Hogwarts." The girls had spent a whole month playing on Wooming Island, and interestingly, all the letters urging them to return were sent to Blake, including those from Hogwarts. "Your parents are in Diagon Alley today. Plus, the school has sent a list of items needed for next semester, so we'll meet your parents first, then start shopping," Blake concluded. Cassandra nodded in agreement. "Okay, my school uniform robe is a bit short. I need a new one." As they prepared for the next school year, the girls were entering their 3rd grade, each with their own list of needs and expectations for the upcoming term. Blake had grown a bit taller, and it was definitely time for new clothes. However, he hadn't thought about changing his attire. His levitating cloak, after all, was not only self-cleaning and dust-free, but also magically adjusted to fit his growing body. After breakfast, the group was ready to set off. Yet, none of the girls wanted to miss the chance to practice their magic. They all eagerly volunteered to open a dimensional door to Diagon Alley themselves. Blake, seeing no other option, allowed each of them to open one, with the plan to meet at the entrance of Flourish and Blot's bookstore in Diagon Alley. Upon arriving in Diagon Alley with Nagini, Blake noticed the atmosphere was different than usual. The most obvious change was the decrease in the number of people. Additionally, the walls were plastered with posters of a man labeled as dangerous, Sirius Black. It seemed the prolonged failure to capture Sirius had escalated the situation. The wizarding world was on edge, fearing the unpredictable terror Sirius could unleash, such as randomly blowing up a street. Understandably, people were hesitant to venture out, especially to places like Diagon Alley. "Let's go," Blake said to Nagini, making their way toward Flourish and Blot's. Along the route, Blake replenished some potion materials and ink parchment. He could feel the weight of many scrutinizing gazes upon him and Nagini. However, when he tried to catch the eyes of those watching, they would often look away, pretending nothing was amiss. It was clear to Blake that these individuals were highly trained, likely elite aurors from the Ministry of Magic, deployed in response to the heightened security situation. Hiss! Harry didn't happen to come to Diagon Alley for shopping today, did he? Blake mused. He recalled that Harry had gone to the Weasleys' burrow half a month ago. The increased security presence in Diagon Alley suggested they were there to protect someone important, likely Harry Potter himself. As Blake neared Flourish and Blot's, he spotted a familiar figure lurking in the shadows of an opposite alley, Severus Snape. This confirmed Blake's suspicion that Harry was indeed in Diagon Alley. Suddenly, a blur of red intercepted Blake. An excited, red-haired girl stood before him. "Good morning, Blake," she exclaimed. "Ginny, good morning. It's been a month since I last saw you. You've become even more beautiful," Blake complimented, causing Ginny's face to turn a shade redder than her hair. From the corner of his eye, Blake noticed Snape in the shadows, seemingly disgusted by the exchange. However, Blake was unfazed, convinced that Snape was merely jealous of his popularity and ability to attract the affection of girls. Soon, several boys from the Weasley family approached, with Fred and George positioning themselves protectively in front of Ginny. Despite their protective stance, Ginny managed to peek out from behind her brothers. "Blake, come to our house as a guest. I want to ask you about flying skills," she said eagerly. Fred responded with a hint of sourness. "Ginny, you need to learn flying skills, but you don't need Blake to teach you." George added, "Yes, besides, Charlie can teach you too, not to mention that we're the main players of Gryffindor." "But," Ginny protested, "last school year, the House Quidditch champion was the Hufflepuff team, and Blake was hailed as the best chaser Hogwarts has seen in centuries." The Weasley twins were left speechless, unable to argue against Blake's undeniable Quidditch prowess. After all, Blake's skills were extraordinary. In the previous school year, he had led the Hufflepuff team to victory against the Slytherin team, showcasing his remarkable abilities even when the odds were against them. "Are you as skilled as Blake?" Ginny pressed on, her determination clear. "No, no." The Weasley twins responded, their faces losing color. "Then why should I seek advice from you instead of someone more capable?" Ginny argued, effortlessly breaking through the barrier formed by her brothers and rushing towards Blake. Fred and George felt a pang of loss in their hearts. It seemed they were losing their sister's admiration. "Ginny, your brothers are actually quite talented," Blake interjected, feeling compelled to mend the situation as he noticed the twins' downtrodden expressions. "They're among the best beaters Hogwarts has seen in recent years." Observing the twins, who were the staff, a spitting image of each other looking utterly dejected, as if they were owed a fortune, Blake quickly changed the subject by handing out packs of spicy strips, instantly lightening the mood. The twins' spirits lifted at the gesture, proving no one could resist Blake's spicy treats. Ginny, now smiling, invited Blake, "Just come over to my house sometime. We could play Quidditch together." Blake glanced towards the entrance of Flourish and Blots, noting the absence of the girls. "I've been quite busy lately, but I'll definitely make time to visit once I'm free," he promised softly. "Really?" Ginny's eyes lit up. "Absolutely," Blake assured her. "Then, I'll be waiting," Ginny exclaimed, her cheeks flushed with excitement as she darted away. At that moment, Cassandra and the Whirly couple appeared nearby. Blake, ever the master of timing, greeted them just as Harry arrived with the Weasley family. The Grangers, returning from their travels, looked rejuvenated, while Mr. Lovegood's eccentric fashion sense remained unchanged despite his increased income. Mr. Whirly maintained his stern demeanor towards Blake, whereas Mrs. Whirly was exceptionally warm, leaving Blake somewhat puzzled. Together, the group entered Flourish and Blots, revitalizing the bookstore's atmosphere. As Blake shopped for textbooks with the others, he noticed Snape signaling him from an alley. Entrusting Nagini with his purchases, Blake excused himself to meet Snape. "Severus, are you here to keep an eye on Harry?" Blake inquired. "It's merely a task assigned by Dumbledore," Snape replied, his tone dismissive. "What did you need from me?" "I must return to buy textbooks," Blake said, urgency in his voice. Snape, visibly annoyed, reminded Blake of a forgotten promise. Despite the passage of time, Blake had yet to assist Snape with an experiment, much to Snape's frustration. Blake, attempting to defuse the situation, suggested, "Can't it wait just one more day?" "I cannot wait any longer," Snape insisted, emphasizing the urgency. Blake, seeing no way out, agreed to start that evening, questioning Snape's availability given his responsibilities. "Potter will be safe at the Burrow tonight. I won't need to watch over him constantly," Snape assured, explaining the security of the location. "All right, if it's that urgent, do you have a suitable place in mind for the experiment?" Blake inquired, ready to fulfill his promise. Snape nodded, confident in his ability to find the perfect location. As long as Blake was willing to cooperate, everything would be set in motion. "Let's just go back now, tear down the old structure, and build a laboratory," Blake suggested, his tone indicating the urgency of their task. "Okay, do you think we should inform Dumbledore about this?" Snape hesitated, the mention of Dumbledore causing him to fall into a thoughtful silence. After a moment, he inquired, "What's your opinion?" Blake responded, "I believe it's necessary to tell him. After all, once little Lily arrives, it won't be possible to keep it a secret from him. It's better to be up front, and then he can assist us with some matters." Snape considered this for a moment before nodding in agreement. Okay, Blake had another reason for wanting Dumbledore involved. With Dumbledore's presence, they would have an additional ally capable of unlocking the treasure chest's secrets. "We also need to find an experienced wet nurse," Snape suggested, though the idea clearly made him uncomfortable. Asking him to find a wet nurse seemed almost as challenging as asking him to locate a Death Eater. "Isn't that unnecessary?" Blake questioned, sensing Snape's reluctance. "No? And who will take care of little Lily when she's born? Can you prepare formula? Do you know how to change diapers?" Snape fell silent at the questions. Indeed, he had no experience with such matters. As a lifelong bachelor, he had never been exposed to the realities of caring for a child. Their conversation highlighted the practical challenges they faced, underscoring the need for preparation on and support in the unexpected journey they were about to embark on. Chapter 374. Snape's Late-Night Study Session. Seeing Snape's bewildered expression, Blake realized that his request might have been somewhat awkward for the solitary professor. "Wait here for a moment," Blake said before he stepped through a dimensional door, vanishing into the shadows of the alley, leaving Snape to ponder his predicament alone. Snape was at a loss, contemplating the daunting task of caring for a newborn. The idea of hiring a nanny crossed his mind, but the thought filled him with unease. As he wrestled with his options, Blake reappeared, his arms laden with a stack of books. "These will be your homework," Blake announced, thrusting the books into Snape's hands. "First, explain the situation to Professor Dumbledore and request some time off. Tell him it's a matter of life and death. That should ensure he won't stand in your way." Snape glanced down at the top book, its title reading, Parenting Handbook. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face as he set it aside, only to reveal the next title, Weekly Guide to Complementary Feeding. "Muggles may lack magical knowledge, but they're quite thorough when it comes to childcare," Blake explained. "These are Muggle books on raising children. Once you've spoken with Dumbledore, start reading. You'll need to be prepared." With that, Blake hurried off, leaving Snape holding the books. A mix of resignation and determination settling over him. Despite his disdain for Muggle publications, he recognized the wisdom in Blake's words. The thought of being able to care for the child personally, rather than standing by helplessly, was compelling. With a newfound resolve, Snape disappeared with a pop, ready to embrace the challenge ahead. Meanwhile, Blake returned to Flourish and Blots, where Nagini awaited him, concern etched on her face. "Where have you been?" she asked quietly, explaining how she had covered for his absence. Blake thanked her, mentioning he had to step out again that evening. When Nagini offered her help, thinking he was heading into danger, Blake hesitated before asking if she knew anyone capable of caring for a child. Nagini, taken aback by the question, admitted her lack of experience with a blush. Blake, realizing the awkwardness of his inquiry, quickly shifted the conversation towards finding a trustworthy caregiver. The secrecy of the matter weighed heavily on Blake. He knew that without discretion, little Lily would face undue scrutiny as she grew. As he pondered potential candidates, it became clear that finding the right person for such a sensitive task would be no small feat. In a moment of uncertainty, Blake found himself pondering potential candidates for a nanny. Mrs. Weasley was a strong contender, but Blake's household already had several magical creatures to manage, and his schedule was overwhelmingly busy. Mrs. Worley was dismissed as an option almost immediately. If she wasn't in need of money, why would she consider working as a nanny? Just as Blake was grappling with this dilemma, Nagini offered a suggestion that brightened his spirits. "Blake, perhaps you could ask Mrs. Marianne for help," she proposed. The idea struck Blake like a bolt of lightning. Mrs. Marianne, the director of the Marian Orphanage, held a special place in his heart. She had raised him, and even after he had left, he would return to the orphanage during vacations. Thanks to Blake's financial support, the orphanage had seen significant improvements, including the hiring of staff to assist with the care of the children. This had alleviated much of Mrs. Marianne's burden, and Blake, perhaps subconsciously, had felt she deserved a respite from her hard work. This was why the thought of asking her for help had never crossed his mind until now. Realizing Mrs. Marianne was indeed the perfect candidate, Blake was filled with gratitude towards Nagini. "Thank you, Nagini. You've been a great help once again," he said, appreciating her insight. Nagini, with a modest smile, then inquired about the reason behind Blake's search for a nanny. As the conversation veered towards the child in question, Blake found himself entangled in a web of explanations. The child, little Lily, was a product of his biotechnology, making the situation complex and difficult to articulate. Nagini's comparison of Blake's flustered state to Mr. Scamander's own awkward explanations only added to his confusion. After concluding their shopping, the group enjoyed a meal at the Leaky Cauldron before parting ways. The girls, having spent a month adventuring, were now under the watchful eyes of their parents and no longer insisted on staying out. They knew they could visit Blake any time through the Waikong Gate, a magical portal they had mastered. However, Blake took precautions by setting restrictions on the portal, ensuring it could only be used with his permission. This measure was both a safeguard and a testament to Blake's unique magical capabilities. As the day came to a close, Blake shared a private word with Nagini before vanishing into the shadows of Diagon Alley, leaving the bustling street behind. Meanwhile, at Hogwarts, a heated debate was unfolding in the headmaster's office. Dumbledore and Snape were at odds over a contentious issue. "Severus, I understand your feelings, but is creating a life truly justifiable?" Dumbledore questioned, his tone laden with concern. Snape's response was icy. "What's wrong with it? I'm not harming anyone." Dumbledore, however, remained unconvinced. "While that may be true, artificially creating life goes against the natural order. Moreover, your intention to recreate Lily is not only unethical, but also a disservice to her memory," he argued, hoping to persuade Snape to reconsider his actions. Dumbledore spoke earnestly, grappling with the ethical implications of creating artificial life. If a second Lily were to emerge, how would Harry confront this new version of his mother? Moreover, the unpredictability of artificial life forms poses too many risks. Recall when we first encountered Blake. Nicholas Flamel observed him for an extended period before deciding to accept him. We cannot be certain that artificially created beings will possess normal human emotions or personalities. What if, in attempting to create life, we inadvertently bring forth a being as malevolent as Voldemort? Even if the likelihood is a mere 1 in 10,000, the risk to global safety is too great. Snape, with a hint of sarcasm, challenged Dumbledore's stance. "You truly oppose this?" he asked. "Yes, Severus, I cannot condone it," Dumbledore replied with unwavering conviction. "Really? Then, Dumbledore, proceed to extinguish a nascent life," Snape retorted, his tone laced with irony. Dumbledore, taken aback, inquired, "You mean to say the experiment has already commenced?" "No, it's not on the verge of starting. It's nearing its conclusion. Will you extinguish a life that's about to be born?" Snape's sarcasm was palpable. Dumbledore, with a heavy heart, removed his glasses. If the experiment had not yet begun, halting it would be meaningful. But now, with the experiment nearly complete, how could he justify ending a burgeoning life? Dumbledore was known for his compassion. Blake, aware of this, had cleverly manipulated the situation, knowing Dumbledore would hesitate to terminate the experiment at such a late stage. It's often said that a gentleman can be easily deceived by those with nefarious intentions, using seemingly reasonable arguments. Blake played the role of the manipulator well, exploiting Dumbledore's inherent goodness. "Where is the experiment being conducted?" Dumbledore eventually asked. "I'm not privy to the location. Blake is spearheading the entire project. Only he knows," Snape responded, following Blake's directive to the letter. Dumbledore, now somewhat resigned, shifted his focus. "What did Blake instruct you to do today?" "He handed me an assortment of parenting books, urging me to read them," Snape replied, his tone flat. The task felt alien to him. He was unaccustomed to anything outside the realm of potion-making. Dumbledore, observing Snape's unusual demeanor, an odd mix of anticipation, joy, and slight apprehension, couldn't help but feel surprised. It was a stark contrast to Snape's typically stoic expression, hinting at a newfound sense of humanity. Dumbledore offered some advice. "He's right, you do well to familiarize yourself with these materials. Otherwise, you'll find yourself utterly unprepared." Though Dumbledore had never had children of his own, he had experience caring for his sister in his youth. He knew all too well the challenges that come with raising children. Snape, acknowledging the wisdom in Dumbledore's words, resolved to dedicate the night to studying the books. Determined to play his part, Dumbledore decided to send a message to Blake via Fawkes, seeking to understand how he could assist further. He quickly penned a letter and handed it to Fawkes, who had an uncanny ability to locate Blake, regardless of his whereabouts. Fawkes took flight, disappearing through the window. Meanwhile, Blake was at Hogwarts, specifically within the Room of Requirement, which he had transformed into a makeshift laboratory. His attention was fixed on a petri dish at the center of the room. After an absence of a month, the peculiar jellyfish-like creature he had been cultivating had metamorphosed into a golden egg. Blake meticulously checked the nutrient solution in the biological petri dish, calculating. In recent days, the creature's appetite had not diminished. Rather, it had undergone a remarkable transformation. It appeared to have metamorphosed into an egg. More intriguingly, since this transformation, it ceased to absorb the nutrient solution it was previously reliant on. Blake, utilizing his true eyes, attempted to discern the mysteries within the egg. Yet, all he could see was a murky, blood-red interior, as if the egg contained nothing but a pool of blood. Despite this, subtle signs indicated to Blake that the egg was far from lifeless. It was still growing, albeit in a peculiar state of dormancy. The duration of this hibernation was uncertain. Deciding to postpone further investigation, Blake removed the egg from the petri dish and secured it within the system warehouse. As he was tidying up the laboratory and preparing for his next task, an unexpected visitor arrived at the room of requirement. Fawkes, the Phoenix, had come, but due to the concealment spells Blake had cast around the laboratory, it failed to locate him. Nevertheless, the melodious song of the Phoenix reached Blake's ears, a sound both beautiful and haunting. Fawkes? It seems Severus has already taken care of it, Blake mused, recognizing the Phoenix's presence as a sign of Severus Snape's involvement. The enchanting song of the Phoenix, while unexpected, reassured Blake that his allies were ever vigilant. Chapter 375, Severus, you can't control Lily, so let me go. Blake stepped out of the laboratory, his eyes scanning the room of requirement until they landed on Fawkes, who was darting around the room. Extending his arm, he beckoned the bird over. Long time no see, Fawkes, he greeted, taking the letter from its beak before rewarding it with a piece of dried cod, Chingnu's favorite. Fawkes chirped joyously, accepting the treat before flying to a nearby table to enjoy its snack while waiting for Blake to pen a response. Unfolding the letter, Blake recognized Dumbledore's unique circular handwriting immediately. The content, however, was unexpected. It simply inquired what assistance Blake required, omitting any mention of the purpose behind the experiment. Dumbledore, it seemed, preferred to discuss such matters in person rather than through correspondence. Without hesitation, Blake grabbed a piece of parchment and began writing his reply. Unlike Snape, Dumbledore had the means to facilitate an experiment in a disturbance-free environment. 10 minutes later, Fawkes was dispatched with the response, and Blake returned to his lab work, accelerating his efforts under the pretense that the experiment was nearing completion. His goal was audacious: to clone a young Lily. Contrary to Snape's assumption, the process was not as time-consuming. Blake had exaggerated the duration to provoke Snape. In reality, cultivating a clone, especially one with the singular bloodline of Lily Evans, required precise steps and calculations, but was relatively quick. In fact, creating little Lily would be faster than any of his previous projects, including the scimitar-horned Snorlax, given the simpler genetic makeup. However, as Blake delved into his work, a sudden thought halted him. If he could create an adult Snorlax, why not an adult Lily? The idea was immediately dismissed. The implications of presenting Snape with an adult Lily, who would technically only be a year old, were troubling. "Oh, Severus, it's for your own good," Blake muttered to himself, rationalizing his decision to create a child version of Lily instead. "As your student, I can't let you err. My daughter, little Lily, is a safer choice." Meanwhile, Dumbledore, with a grave expression, set aside Blake's letter. Among the various requests, one stood out: the presence of Grindelwald at the experiment. Dumbledore was perplexed. Why insist on involving Grindelwald? Was Blake seeking information about his own origins from the old wizard? Blake's background was a puzzle, seemingly straightforward, yet enigmatic. Initially deemed a failed experiment, Blake's sudden transformation into a success raised questions. More baffling was the identity of the person who knew of this miraculous outcome and had rescued Blake from the laboratory while he was still an infant. Given that Grindelwald's defeat had occurred decades earlier, the mystery of Blake's survival and emergence deepened. In the annals of history, even Grindelwald himself had faded into obscurity. Thus, even if the experiment miraculously succeeded and Blake was resurrected, his survival would hang by a thread if no one discovered him in the laboratory. As a mere infant, Blake would face certain death from starvation if left unattended. It seemed, however, that fortune had smiled upon him at just the right moment. Someone had stumbled upon the laboratory at the opportune time, rescuing the child and placing him on the doorstep of an orphanage. Could it have been a wizard who, by sheer chance, found the laboratory and witnessed Blake awakening in the petri dish, and then took it upon themselves to deliver him to an orphanage? The odds of such a coincidence seemed astronomically high. After much contemplation, Dumbledore concluded that, improbable as it might seem, coincidence was the most plausible explanation. Let it be. In time, we will understand Blake's perspective, Dumbledore resolved, deciding to honor Blake's request. That old man? Well, it's of no consequence. Blake has no ties to him, and there's no point in our intervention. Dumbledore then retrieved another piece of parchment, preparing to send Fawkes on another errand to Austria. Meanwhile, Blake was in the laboratory, his gaze fixed on the biological petri dish before him. The blood-red liquid within churned as if boiling, signaling the experiment's climax. Blake reviewed his calculations meticulously. Once satisfied, a sense of relief washed over him. If all went according to plan, in just one more hour, little Lily would be welcomed into the world. Yet, there remained a crucial final step, the infusion of a new soul into the infant's body. Blake intended to perform this step in Grindelwald's presence. Blake harbored doubts about the spontaneous appearance of his soul in his new body. He suspected that someone had intentionally intervened towards the experiment's conclusion. To validate his theory, he planned to complete the process before Grindelwald. If Grindelwald showed any recognition, Blake's suspicions would be confirmed. This was Blake's inaugural attempt at creating a human being through biotechnology. Part of him harbored the hope that, should the experiment succeed, the new soul in little Lily's body might also hail from another world, much like his own. Such an outcome would bring Blake immense joy. As a time traveler, he often felt isolated, burdened with knowledge he could share with no one. If little Lily's soul originated from his world, he would finally have someone who could truly understand him. However, Blake pondered, if such a person were to arrive, would they also possess a system? As Blake was lost in thought, Fawkes's chirping echoed once more in the room of requirement, signaling that Dumbledore had fulfilled his requests. In Nurmengard, on the stadium where Blake had previously vanquished a vampire, the scene was desolate. A few scattered individuals stood in the center, with tables and chairs arranged around them. Grindelwald confronted Dumbledore, wand in hand, and with a cold utterance, a puff of gray smoke emerged from its tip. Suddenly, the entire stadium was enveloped in a dense gray fog. A bat, caught in the fog, plummeted to the ground, transforming into a clean skeleton within seconds. Dumbledore's brow furrowed. The magic you wield is as malevolent and ruthless as ever. What if an innocent were to be harmed? Malevolent and innocent, Grindelwald retorted icily. This is Nurmengard. There are no bystanders here. Moreover, I have issued a strict edict forbidding anyone from approaching the stadium under penalty of death. My followers are loyal. Should there be any dissenters, they would not be counted among my ranks. If they are not of my own, their fate is sealed. Ignoring my orders and warnings while keeping my secrets has its limits. I may have grown kinder over the years, but that doesn't mean I've become a toothless tiger, Grindelwald declared, making it clear that Blake was his red line. He had designated this place as a secretive experimental ground for Blake, demanding absolute discretion and compliance with Blake's extensive and confidential needs. Anyone caught spying would face lethal consequences. Grindelwald's warning was clear. He was not afraid to bare his fangs to those seeking their own demise. Grindelwald settled into a chair, and Vita, with a steady hand, poured him a cup of coffee. You might as well get comfortable. It'll take some time for your phoenix to deliver the message to Blake, he remarked. Dumbledore, unable to resist a retort, joined them, his presence immediately stirring the air with tension. Old fool, he muttered, though his heart betrayed a rare flutter of disturbance in Grindelwald's presence. Vita, about to serve Dumbledore coffee, paused at Grindelwald's snide comment. Forget it, he doesn't drink coffee. Only sweet things for this old child, Grindelwald teased, causing Vita to hesitate, the coffee pot in hand. The atmosphere thickened with the unsaid, the Elder Wand appearing in Dumbledore's grip, a silent testament to their storied past. Vita recognized the wand, once Grindelwald's, now a symbol of their complex history. "I have no desire to duel, especially not in front of the child," Grindelwald deflected, well aware that the balance of power had shifted since their days of rivalry, with Dumbledore now holding the Elder Wand. Their argument was abruptly paused by the appearance of a dimensional door in the sky, from which Blake emerged, followed by a crystal coffin-like container. Blake, oblivious to the time spent in his laboratory, greeted the assembled group, inadvertently stirring the pot by addressing Grindelwald in a manner that suggested a familial bond, much to Dumbledore's chagrin. Blake quickly diverted the conversation to his project, noting Snape's silent but intense interest in the biological petri dish floating behind him. Within the murky liquid of the dish, the faint outline of a small baby was visible, drawing everyone's attention. Grindelwald, despite his initial displeasure at not being called father by Blake, couldn't hide his intrigue at the familiar-looking entity within the dish. Dumbledore, too, found himself drawn to the sight, prompting a discussion about Blake's origins and the mysterious lab of his birth. As the conversation unfolded, it became clear that the secrets held within the petri dish were not only a matter of scientific curiosity, but also of deep personal significance to all involved, hinting at connections and revelations that would challenge their understanding of the past and the very nature of their world. Dumbledore pointed to the biological petri dish in front of Blake, his tone laced with curiosity and a hint of suspicion. "Why does your container look exactly the same as the one I saw in that laboratory?" Dumbledore had visited that particular laboratory for an inspection within the last 2 years, so his memory of the equipment was vivid. "I recognized it instantly. It's identical to the container in the laboratory." Grindelwald, who had last seen the laboratory equipment decades ago, initially only felt a sense of familiarity. However, Dumbledore's observations sparked his memory. "That's right. Dumbledore is correct. Blake, this petri dish of yours is the spitting image of the one I encountered in the laboratory. It doesn't really matter to us, to be honest. We won't hold it against you. Have you, by any chance, visited that laboratory?" Grindelwald's question carried a hint of suspicion, wondering if Blake had somehow repaired the biological petri dish found in the laboratory and claimed it as his own, perhaps too fearful of repercussions to admit it. However, Blake's response was calm and firm, shaking his head gently. "No, Professor Grindelwald, Professor Dumbledore. I crafted this biological petri dish entirely on my own." He paused for emphasis before continuing. "To be precise, I invented it from scratch, based on designs provided by a system that are not known in this world. It wouldn't be incorrect to say that I created it myself." Dumbledore and Grindelwald, both exceptionally intelligent and perceptive, quickly grasped the implications of Blake's explanation. If Blake had indeed invented something that mirrored the equipment found in the laboratory decades ago, there could only be one plausible explanation. Chapter 376. Time Traveler. Blake appeared somewhat perplexed as he muttered, "It seems I've made myself." Dumbledore and Grindelwald rose to their feet simultaneously. Dumbledore, with a frown, said, "In other words, one day in the future, you will travel through time." Time travel is, strictly speaking, a very serious matter. Once a person travels back to the past, it can have a profound impact on both the future and the present. Setting aside the broader implications for the world, the journey can be almost fatal for the time traveler themselves. He continued, "The longest recorded instance of time travel involved a silent worker at the Ministry of Magic who journeyed back centuries. Upon her return to the modern era, the world had changed dramatically. At least 20 people had vanished, erased from existence because the past had been altered. Moreover, time itself suffered a 063 distortion, resulting in a day with only a few hours of daylight. The Ministry of Magic expended considerable effort to cover this up, and the traveler's physical condition deteriorated fatally. She aged by at least 2 centuries. Despite being a witch, she couldn't withstand such a drastic loss of vitality and eventually died." Turning his gaze to Grindelwald, Dumbledore expressed his concern. "If Blake intends to travel back in time, even if it's just to your era, Grindelwald, the risks are immense. He then fixed a stern look on Grindelwald. You surely remember who assisted you with those biological experiments. After the failure, how did you deal with the person in charge? Did you kill him? Dumbledore's worry was palpable. He feared that Grindelwald in his darker days might have harmed Blake. Grindelwald, however, retorted, "What are you implying? Back then, I didn't just kill wizards indiscriminately. I believed every wizard was a miracle, a talent to be cherished." Dumbledore pressed him. "I need you to recount the details of those biological experiments." Grindelwald reassured him. The person in charge was very mysterious. The experiment didn't fail outright. It failed because, at the critical moment, the person in charge vanished. Realization dawned on Grindelwald as he looked at Blake. The mysterious individual responsible for the disappearance was Blake himself, who had likely used a disguise to conceal his true identity, explaining why Grindelwald didn't recognize him. Blake, seeking clarity, asked, "How did you come to appoint me as the person in charge of the biological experiment?" "Professor Grindelwald, please try to remember any details. They might prove crucial if I indeed travel through time in the future," Blake urged. Grindelwald's expression turned grave as he pondered. "It's been a long time. My memory of the details is hazy," he admitted. "All I recall is that it was shortly after my fallout with Dumbledore. I was on the verge of embarking on my own path, in need of allies who shared my vision." He glanced at Dumbledore, a hint of regret in his eyes for their parted ways. "Then you appeared, learned of my past, and proposed a rather outlandish idea." The conversation shifted to the biological experiments, which had been ambitious from the start. Just as success seemed within reach, the person in charge, Blake, disappeared, leading to the project's failure. Grindelwald had been on the verge of launching a search when Dumbledore confronted him, leading to their legendary duel. In the end, the chapter leaves readers with a sense of the complex interplay of time, the consequences of altering the past, and the intricate relationships between these powerful wizards. Disheartened, Grindelwald had taken to calling himself Nermengard. It was only when the topic of the laboratory came up again that Blake nodded in acknowledgement. "I remember." "Blake." Dumbledore's expression was laced with concern. "Professor Dumbledore, it appears that I am destined to be a time traveler in the future. My presence here has already made that a certainty," Blake said, trying to offer me comfort. "Don't worry, I'm not someone who easily finds themselves in danger." Dumbledore let out a heavy sigh before turning his attention to Grindelwald. "How old did Blake appear to you at that time?" he inquired. Despite knowing that Blake's true appearance might have been concealed by a transformation spell at the time, Dumbledore hoped to use this detail to pinpoint the period Blake would travel back in time. Grindelwald paused, reflecting on the question before responding. "Even though his appearance might have been disguised, I sensed that he was quite young." This revelation did not sit well with Dumbledore. If Blake was indeed very young, it suggested that his journey through time might occur in the near future. "Old fool, sighing won't help us now. We might as well start preparing for his arrival," Grindelwald remarked. "I'm not sure what method he used to travel back in time," Dumbledore mused, his thoughts interrupted by a sudden realization. He remembered a conversation with Professor McGonagall about Hermione Granger. She had written to McGonagall, expressing her desire to enroll in all the subjects in her third year and inquiring about how to manage it. Given Hermione's exceptional academic performance, McGonagall had agreed to apply for a time-turner on her behalf. "The time-turner," Dumbledore murmured. "Time-turner?" Grindelwald echoed, puzzled. "But isn't that device limited to a maximum of 5 hours? And how would Blake get his hands on a time-turner?" "Next semester, Miss Hermione Granger from our school will successfully apply for a time-turner. And since Miss Granger is a good friend of Blake's..." Dumbledore trailed off, implying that this could be Blake's opportunity to become a time traveler. "Next school year? Are you suggesting Blake might travel back in time during his third year?" Grindelwald asked. "Yes," Dumbledore confirmed. "I'm not convinced," Grindelwald countered. "The person I sensed was young, but not that young." Dumbledore sighed once more. "It seems we all need to be prepared, regardless." The thought of Blake potentially using the time-turner to travel back in time was unsettling, but they were powerless to prevent it. Stopping Blake could result in his current self ceasing to exist, a risk they could not take. Time is an enigmatic force, its rules beyond anyone's comprehension. Ahem. Although it might seem inappropriate to bring this up now, Snape interjected, pointing to the biological petri dish. If we leave it as is, will this experiment fail? Snape was growing impatient. It was the day little Lily was expected to be born, yet here they were, discussing time travelers. Couldn't the experiment be completed before delving into such topics? Blake responded, no, even if we don't proceed with the final step, and the nascent life in the petri dish hasn't been endowed with a soul, it can still survive until the nutrient solution is depleted. There's enough nutrient solution in the dish to sustain it for several decades. Mid-sentence, Blake halted, a new thought dawning on him. Would the life form eventually perish once the nutrient solution ran out, potentially after several decades? This realization led him to a startling conclusion. It seems I may have traveled through time more than once. Chapter 377, Unforeseen Successes. In the room, a sense of anticipation hung in the air, thick with the promise of revelations yet to come. Each person present was a brilliant mind in their own right, and upon hearing Blake's explanation, understanding dawned on them. So, what you're saying is that the experiment didn't fail, it was simply incomplete, one of them summarized, piecing together the puzzle. And your disappearance was because you ventured into different time periods. For instance, traveling back over a decade to finalize the experiment, and then placing yourself in the Marianne orphanage. Grindelwald, with a look of realization, turned to Blake. No wonder we couldn't find you at the start. You were the child all along. Although there was no absolute certainty that Blake was the enigmatic leader of the experiment, the likelihood was overwhelmingly high, nearly certain. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. Blake had executed the final stages of the experiment during Grindelwald's era, knowing his destiny lay within an orphanage in 1980. Thus he vanished in the experiment's concluding phase, his time travel weaving itself into the fabric of history. Snape, listening intently, was a mix of anxiety and hope. The possibility of Blake's successful time travel meant there was hope for little Lily's experiment. I must not overthink, he cautioned himself. We need to focus on what preparations we can make for Blake. Dumbledore's gaze was thoughtful, pondering the essentials that might safeguard Blake's journey. Grindelwald, too, was deep in thought. Snape, growing impatient with their silence, coughed pointedly, reminding them of the urgency. Yet, his coughs seemed to fall on deaf ears. Finally, Blake broke the silence. We'll face whatever comes our way. It's best to complete this experiment swiftly. It's all part of gaining the experience I need. Dumbledore and Grindelwald, previously hesitant about the ethical implications of biological experiments, found themselves in agreement. They recognized the necessity of these trials for Blake's growth and the success of his time travel endeavors. Proceed with all your heart, Grindelwald encouraged earnestly, ready to provide whatever resources were needed. His commitment to Blake's success was unwavering. With a nod of agreement, Blake turned his attention to the task at hand, approaching the biological petri dish with determination. Utilizing the eye of reality, he peered through the murky liquid, assessing little Lily's condition. The discussion had clarified the path forward. Only the final step remained. Catching Snape's anxious gaze, Blake offered a reassuring smile, which seemed to alleviate some of Snape's worries. Don't worry, Severus, he said, his confidence infectious. Blake then produced a bottle containing the painstakingly gathered soul ashes. Professor Grindelwald, have you encountered this before? He inquired. After a careful examination, Grindelwald shook his head. I've never seen anything like it. Such distinctive characteristics would have been memorable. Acknowledging this, Blake proceeded without hesitation. He retrieved a square meter of white paper from his pocket, laying it flat on the ground. Then, with red thread in hand, he began the intricate process of the final step, his actions precise and deliberate. The room watched in silence, the air charged with the anticipation of witnessing something unprecedented. Candles, humanoid puppets, and various other items lay scattered around, causing Severus Snape's scalp to tingle at the sight. Some of these items were eerily familiar to him, as they had been used by Blake in a previous ritual to summon the spirit of Lily Potter. The memory of his conversation with Lily's apparition softened Snape's expression considerably. That day, the emotional turmoil that had plagued him for years was finally eased by Lily's ghost. Blake retrieved a bucket filled with the blood of an unidentified creature and began to draw on a sheet of white paper. Gradually, a compel X an intricate pattern emerged. He methodically lit the red candles, placing them in precise locations around the pattern. The red rope was then tied to the candles, forming elaborate knots. Dumbledore's puzzled expression prompted Blake to explain. Children created through biotechnology lack a soul. They possess only a physical form, much like I once did. To imbue a body with a soul, one must negotiate with the god of death. The old soul passes on, making room for a new one to emerge. Although the explanation was lost on most of those present, they understood that this was not the time for questions. Blake opened a bottle containing what he referred to as soul ashes, and, with his wand, selected a wisp of ash. After a moment's thought, he chose a second wisp, adhering to the necromantic belief that exchanging 2 soul ashes could result in a superior new soul, with 2 being the maximum limit to avoid overflow. Blake hoped this would endow little Lily with exceptional talents. As the 2 wisps of soul ash hovered above the formation, Blake sat cross-legged and began chanting a lengthy and obscure incantation. After 10 minutes, just as Snape's patience was wearing thin, the flames of the 18 red candles flared up dramatically. A strange gray mist erupted from the center of the formation, filled with countless whispers that filled the silent room, creating an eerie atmosphere that unnerved everyone present. Snape, in particular, felt a chill run down his spine, sensing that this ritual was far more unsettling than the last. Fortunately, the unsettling display was short-lived. The gray mist eventually dissipated, leaving the formation largely unchanged, except for the disappearance of the soul ashes. In their place was a bright white light. Blake extended his wand, and the white light gracefully floated towards it before being directed into a biological petri dish, much like the process used to create a bent-horn Snorlax, though this time it involved the transference of a soul. "Did it work?" Snape inquired, his voice tinged with nervous anticipation. Blake nodded, his eyes reflecting a mixture of hope and excitement. "It should have," he affirmed, sensing the potent energy of the newly formed soul. Snape's gaze remained fixed on the petri dish, eager for any sign of success. "It will take some time," Blake cautioned. "Oh," Snape responded, his disappointment evident. Observing Snape's reaction, Blake inquired, "Are you prepared for what comes next?" "Of course," Snape declared, his confidence bolstered by the extensive research he had undertaken, despite only retaining about 70 to 80% of the information. "Have you prepared the milk powder?" Blake asked, catching Snape off guard. "Ah, milk powder? I don't have any," Snape stammered. "And the diapers?" "No." "So, you don't even have a clean cloth to wrap the child in?" "No, I don't," Snape admitted, his face flushing with embarrassment. Blake's questioning revealed Snape's unpreparedness, much to the amusement of Dumbledore, who watched the exchange with a rare glimpse of Snape's vulnerable side. This moment of humility seemed to endear Snape even further to his longtime mentor, who found the situation unexpectedly heartwarming. Snape, unable to contain his frustration any longer, finally spoke up in his defense. "Since you've read the books, you should know how essential these items are. Did you expect me to remind you to purchase them? If so, what was the point of reading those books in the first place?" he retorted, visibly irritated. Blake responded with equal fervor. "No, I knew better than to rely on you. I've already made the necessary preparations myself." Grindelwald, observing the exchange with a hint of amusement, offered his assistance. "Blake, if there's anything you need, I can have someone procure it for you. It's important to have everything ready before the baby arrives." Blake declined, explaining his reasoning. "Thank you, but I've taken care of it. The people under your command are involved in too many complicated matters. It wouldn't be safe for the secrecy of this experiment." Grindelwald, unfazed by Dumbledore's disapproving glare, praised Blake. "As expected of our son, always so thoughtful." The conversation was interrupted by a distinct ding sound, drawing everyone's attention to the biological petri dish. This sound, Blake noted with a hint of annoyance, was remarkably similar to the notification tone of his system, as well as the beep of a microwave when the heating is done, humorously likening it to the sound of hot rice being ready. "Let's proceed," Snape urged, unable to contain his excitement. Blake, pushing Snape aside gently, retrieved a suitcase and from it, an insulated box with a glass display. He had indeed prepared thoroughly for this moment. Approaching the petri dish, he pressed his palm against a screen, prompting the lid to open with a crack. A foul, fishy odor immediately filled the air as a small figure emerged. With a flick of his wand, Blake cleansed the newborn of any impurities. He then skillfully wrapped the little one in a clean, white cloth, his actions refined by years of caring for babies in an orphanage where he grew up. Snape, watching from a distance, appeared hesitant, torn between his desire to approach and his reluctance to intrude. Once the baby was securely wrapped, Blake finally had the chance to closely observe the little girl in his arms. Confirming her gender, he was struck by her quiet demeanor and the intelligent look in her emerald green eyes. There was no crying, no fussing. The baby, with her pink skin and bright eyes, was evidently not a soulless being. The experiment had been a success. Blake, moved by the moment, whispered a secret code to the baby, only to be met with her sudden loud cries. Confused and slightly amused, he wondered if the baby had somehow understood him, but then realized she was probably just cold. Ermengarde's summer chill was not to be underestimated, after all. Quickly placing the baby in the pre-warmed incubator, her cries ceased, leading Blake to reconsider his earlier thought. Maybe she hadn't cried because of the code, but simply because she was cold. Snape, unable to contain his curiosity any longer, approached Blake. "May I take a look?" Blake, stepping aside to allow everyone a view, responded, "Of course, everyone is welcome to come and see." Blake watched intently as the baby, swaddled in soft cloths, lay peacefully in the incubator. He had just finished tidying up the laboratory, clearing away all the biological petri dishes and the clutter that had accumulated on the floor. Snape, standing beside him, gazed at the little girl with a mixture of awe and disbelief. The sight of her familiar green eyes seemed to stir something deep within him, blurring his vision with unshed tears. Those eyes, so reminiscent of Lily's, sparked a tumult of emotions in Snape's heart. The realization that he would have a daughter, a child who bore such a striking resemblance to Lily, filled him with an indescribable sense of joy. Blake, who had been standing quietly to the side, observed Snape's emotional upheaval. Suddenly, the system within him sprang to life. Ding! Ecstatic emotion detected. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining a supreme treasure box. A bright smile broke across Blake's usually stoic face. Finally, all those 6 months of relentless effort have borne fruit, he thought to himself. Snape, despite his considerable emotional depth, was still not on the same level as Dumbledore in terms of emotional intensity. Under normal circumstances, even a significant emotional outburst from Snape might only trigger the appearance of diamond or gold treasure chests. However, tonight, fortune had decidedly favored Blake. The joy of this unexpected success was not just about the reward itself, but also about the validation of his hard work and patience. Blake knew that navigating the complex emotional landscape of someone like Snape required a delicate balance of persistence and understanding. This moment of triumph was a testament to his dedication and a sign that perhaps he was closer to his ultimate goal than ever before. Chapter 378. Are all your wizards' relationships this messy? The baby lay in a cozy incubator, her cries having ceased. Surrounded by a crowd, her emerald green eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Ah, what a lovely child," Grindelwald remarked, his gaze shifting towards Blake with a mix of admiration and mischief. "Blake, why don't you find a girl and give me a grandchild to dote on?" Blake nearly choked on his own breath. "Are you serious? I'm only 12 years old, and I won't even be 13 until August." Grindelwald sighed dramatically. Okay, I don't know how long I can wait. You know, I'm not getting any younger." Blake's expression darkened. The idea of fatherhood was absurd to him at his age. "Old man, Blake is still a child," Dumbledore interjected, his voice rising in anger, causing his beard to bristle. Grindelwald muttered, "Well, he's quite capable for his age. I knew it was a mistake to bring Blake here." Dumbledore exclaimed, Calm down, you old fool." Grindelwald retorted, and the two elders began to bicker. Meanwhile, Snape was oblivious to their argument, his attention solely on the baby, little Lily. He hesitated, wanting to hold her, but fearing he might harm her due to her fragility. "Blake? May I hold her?" Snape asked, his voice uncertain. "Of course," Blake replied, giving him a puzzled look. "Isn't she your daughter? You should be able to hug her without fear." How should I do it?" Snape's voice was tinged with nervousness. The parenting book he had studied so intently the night before was now forgotten, his mind a blank slate. Blake sighed, seeing Snape's cautious demeanor. "First, place one hand under her neck, supporting her head. Then, with your other hand, support her body. Like this." Blake demonstrated, carefully lifting little Lily from the incubator. She sucked her thumb, eyeing Blake with curiosity. "Do you understand?" Blake asked. "Yes, I think so." Snape replied quickly. "All right, then give it a try." Blake approached Snape, gently transferring little Lily into his arms. Snape wiped his hands on his robes nervously before mimicking Blake's actions, taking little Lily into his arms. She was incredibly soft and light. Holding her, Snape felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility wash over him. He vowed to protect her at all costs, even if it meant sacrificing his own life. "Good boy. Just remember, stay away from people with yellow hair in the future," Snape whispered, glancing at Blake with a soft warning. Blake's expression soured. "What's wrong with yellow hair?" he muttered under his breath, touching his own light blonde hair in confusion. Snape, holding the child, felt an indescribable warmth in his heart, but his moment of bliss was short-lived as little Lily's expression changed, her mouth puckering in distress. "Uh-oh," Snape murmured, sensing trouble. As if on cue, little Lily burst into tears. Snape, now flustered, looked to Blake for guidance. Blake checked his watch. "Well, she must be hungry. It's about time for her to eat since she was born." With a flick of his wrist, Blake conjured a baby bottle, ready to soothe little Lily's cries. The scene, chaotic yet filled with a strange sense of family, left one wondering, are all wizards' relationships this complicated? Blake, holding a bottle filled with warm milk, took the child from Snape's hands without any hesitation. Although breast milk might be more beneficial for newborns, finding a wet nurse at such short notice was out of the question. Little Lily ceased her crying the moment the bottle's spout touched her lips, eagerly drinking the milk. Snape, who had been tense with worry, felt a wave of relief wash over him, having feared he might have inadvertently harmed the baby. As he skillfully fed the baby, Blake remarked, "It seems you're not quite prepared to care for a baby yet." "I'm ready," Snape quickly asserted, eager to prove his capability. "Oh, really? But you don't even recognize when she's hungry or when it's time to change her diaper. Are you truly ready? You must understand, a newborn is very fragile," Blake pointed out, emphasizing the gravity of caring for an infant. This time, Snape remained silent. He was willing to learn, yet the thought of the baby getting hurt under his watch was unbearable. He couldn't bear the thought of any harm coming to her due to his inexperience. "Don't worry, Severus. I've got this covered," Blake reassured him. "I'll find someone I trust implicitly to help care for this child. You can come and assist whenever you're free." Snape breathed a sigh of relief. The prospect of having someone experienced to help was comforting. Caring for a young child was far more challenging than he had anticipated, leaving him at a loss whenever the baby cried. "Who are you planning to ask for help?" Snape inquired, curiosity piqued. "The person I trust most," Blake replied, just as a circle of sparks appeared nearby, opening a door to another dimension. The sight caused both Dumbledore and Grindelwald to react with surprise. The magic to open a dimensional door was rare, and they had clearly seen that Blake was not the one who had cast it. Yet, who else could wield such power? Through the dimensional door stepped Nagini, followed by a visibly astonished Madame Marian. Although Madame Marian had raised Blake and was aware of the existence of other worlds from Dumbledore, witnessing such magic firsthand was a new experience for her. "Mrs. Marian," Blake greeted warmly, though he continued to feed little Lily, preventing him from greeting her more formally. In many ways, Madame Marian was like a mother to him. "Blake!" Madame Marian exclaimed, her eyes lighting up at the sight of him and the baby in his arms. "Ah, what a cute child! Those familiar green eyes. I remember a girl who was always with you who had green eyes." Her tone suddenly shifted, filled with concern and a hint of reprimand. "Could it be that but you're so young, and already have a child. This could be so harmful to her." Blake was taken aback, his face turning pale as he realized the misunderstanding. "Wait a minute, Lady Marianne. Things are not as they seem," he hurriedly tried to clarify, worried about the potential fallout of such a misunderstanding. It appeared Nagini had not fully explained the situation to Madame Marian, who had agreed to help, believing she was simply assisting Blake with childcare, a task she was familiar with. The misunderstanding needed to be cleared up immediately, lest it cause more confusion and concern. After all, Blake had not only been responsible for Hermione the previous year, but now he found himself in a delicate situation that required careful explanation to avoid further misunderstandings and ensure the well-being of little Lily. Mrs. Marianne had initially been taken aback by the presence of Cassandra, mistaking her for Blake's child due to her striking green eyes. However, Blake quickly clarified that Cassandra was, in fact, Professor Snape's daughter, not his. This revelation led to a brief moment of awkwardness, especially when Mrs. Marianne couldn't help but notice that Cassandra bore little resemblance to Snape. Choosing not to voice this observation, she instead focused her attention on the newborn baby, Lily, whom Blake had brought along. Mrs. Marianne's expertise in handling children was evident as she skillfully took Lily from Blake, immediately recognizing the signs of a newborn, including the freshly cut umbilical cord. Her assumption that magic was responsible for the absence of blood was a testament to her understanding and acceptance of the magical world. Sensing the delicate situation surrounding the baby's mother, Mrs. Marianne wisely refrained from asking any potentially painful questions. When Blake requested Mrs. Marianne's assistance in teaching Snape how to care for a child, she readily agreed, her smile reassuring Snape of her willingness to help. Her lifelong experience with children and her fondness for them made her the perfect candidate for this task, especially since Blake's financial support had allowed her more free time from her duties at the orphanage. As they settled into their conversation, Mrs. Marianne reminisced about the day she found Blake as a baby, abandoned in the snow. The memory was bittersweet, highlighting both her compassion and the harsh reality of Blake's beginnings. Blake's discomfort at the mention of his cruel parents hinted at a deeper, more complex story, one that Mrs. Marianne was unaware of. The arrival of Dumbledore, Grindelwald, and Vida introduced new dynamics to the gathering. Mrs. Marianne's polite greeting to Dumbledore, whom she recognized, contrasted with her curiosity about the others. Grindelwald's introduction as Blake's father, the very person Mrs. Marianne had just criticized, created an awkward moment. However, her initial embarrassment quickly turned to indignation as she remembered the circumstances of Blake's abandonment. Despite the tension, Mrs. Marianne's observation of Grindelwald's youthful appearance, thanks to a life-extending potion, and the resemblance she noted between him and Blake, added layers to their interaction. Her ability to see past the awkwardness and recognize the familial connection spoke to her character and her capacity for understanding and forgiveness. This encounter, filled with misunderstandings, revelations, and emotional undercurrents, showcased the complexities of relationships and the unexpected connections that can arise, even in the magical world. Mrs. Marianne's role as a caregiver and confidant to both Blake and now Snape, along with her interactions with Grindelwald, highlighted the themes of redemption, responsibility, and the enduring impact of kindness. In the presence of everyone, Mrs. Marianne unleashed a torrent of rebuke. "How could you be so heartless?" she demanded. "Did you know the child was abandoned in the snow, nearly freezing to death? If you didn't want him, why bring him into this world?" As her tirade continued, even young Lily succumbed to sleep. After 10 minutes, Mrs. Marianne's voice finally quieted, leaving those around her in a stunned silence. Grindelwald, the target of her scolding, was visibly sweating under the onslaught. "Child, I had no idea you endured such hardships in your youth, but there were reasons for my actions at the time," Grindelwald attempted to explain, his face glistening with sweat. "What possible reason could justify neglecting your own child's life?" Mrs. Marianne's heart ached with sorrow. Dumbledore interjected calmly. He truly had no other option. He was imprisoned at the time. Hearing Dumbledore's explanation, Grindelwald felt a wave of relief wash over him, grateful for the understanding. Mrs. Marion, however, was taken aback. "Oh, is that so?" She hadn't anticipated that Grindelwald's so-called difficulties were of this nature. "Excuse me, are you Blake's mother?" Mrs. Marion inquired, turning her attention to Vita Rocheron. Like Grindelwald, Vita appeared decades younger, thanks to a life-extending potion, leading Mrs. Marion to mistake her for someone of an age to be Blake's mother. Feeling a chill run down her spine, Vita quickly clarified, "No, it's not me." She gestured towards Dumbledore, adding, He is also Blake's father." Dumbledore's smile vanished instantly. "Huh?" Mrs. Marion's gaze shifted between Dumbledore and Grindelwald, confusion evident on her face. "Is the relationship among you wizards always this complicated?" Chapter 379, A Plea for Kindness. Mrs. Marion's voice was soft, filled with a genuine concern that transcended the complexities of the situation. "That's all. I don't really want to delve into your relationship," she began, her gaze not leaving the peaceful face of the sleeping child in her arms. "It doesn't matter to me which of you is Blake's real father. My reproach was merely to highlight the hardships this child endured in his early years. I only hope that from now on you can treat him with the kindness he deserves. Please, don't abandon him again. He's truly a remarkable child," she added, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Grindelwald, moved by her sincerity, responded with a gravity that matched the moment. "Mrs. Marion, your compassion is unparalleled. You are, without a doubt, the most admirable Muggle I have ever encountered. I now realize the errors of my past and am committed to making amends. I will ensure this child receives the love and care he deserves," he promised. Dumbledore, standing beside him, nodded in agreement. "You are correct. I am indeed Blake's father, and I vow not to fail him again." Mrs. Marion, though not fully understanding the intricate dynamics between the wizards, felt a sense of relief. Knowing that these individuals were willing to be kind to Blake was all that mattered to her. If Blake could find happiness in their care, then she was content. Dumbledore then extended an invitation that would change their lives. "Would you consider coming to stay at Hogwarts for a while? This child needs you." Snape, who had been quietly observing the exchange, couldn't hide his joy at Dumbledore's suggestion. The prospect of having Mrs. Marion, and by extension, little Lily, at Hogwarts meant he could be a part of the child's life daily. "I will arrange for the Marion orphanage to be looked after in your absence. Please, have no worries," Dumbledore assured her. Mrs. Marion smiled, her heart light. "There's nothing to worry about. The orphanage is in good hands with the staff there. Caring for a child now feels like a vacation compared to the early days when I was alone with so many children." Blake, unable to contain his excitement, exclaimed, "Great! I can't wait to show you around my school." His eagerness was palpable, reminiscent of a child eager to share his world with a loved one. In Mrs. Marion's presence, Blake found a solace that eased his loneliness. "I'm eager to see it too," Mrs. Marion replied, her smile matching Blake's enthusiasm. Dumbledore, confident in the impression Hogwarts would leave, added, "I believe you will be pleasantly surprised." His attention then shifted to Grindelwald, his tone taking on a stern edge. "It's time to dispel the dark enchantments you've surrounded yourself with." Grindelwald, ever defiant, retorted, "I know what I have to do. There's no need for your nagging." Attempting to sway Mrs. Marion, Grindelwald mentioned his own magical institution. "I also run a magic school, Nurmengard Magic Academy. I'd be honored if Blake considered attending." Dumbledore's eyes narrowed, sensing Grindelwald's underlying motive. Was he daring to poach in front of him? The tension between the two wizards was palpable, each challenging the other with a steely gaze. Blake, sensing the growing discomfort, interjected, "Perhaps we should head to Hogwarts now. It's getting quite cold here, and that's not good for the children." Grindelwald, though disappointed, couldn't hide his admiration for Blake. "If only I had known about you sooner," he lamented. Blake, opening a dimensional door, reassured him, "It doesn't matter which school I attend. I am who I am, regardless." Dumbledore, though slightly annoyed, understood Blake's sentiment. Blake was someone who valued connections and would never forget those who had aided him. Even if Grindelwald had his faults, he had, in his own way, supported Blake. Resigning to the situation, Dumbledore watched as Mrs. Marion gently placed the child back into the crib, With a flick of his wand, the crib floated behind them, ready for their journey to Hogwarts. Mrs. Marion, filled with a sense of wonder and anticipation, followed, eager to see the magical world that had become a significant part of Blake's life. In awe of the scene before him, Blake exclaimed, "Honestly, if I had magic at my disposal earlier, taking care of you would have been a breeze." Hogwarts, with its myriad of rooms, provided a comfortable space for Lady Marion and little Lily. Dumbledore had thoughtfully placed them in the staff quarters, right next to Nagini's dormitory, ensuring they could look out for one another. Additionally, Dumbledore enlisted the help of a house elf experienced in childcare to assist Lady Marion. Initially bewildered by the existence of house elves, Lady Marion quickly found reassurance in the elf's adept handling of her needs. Given the late hour, Blake decided to leave after ensuring they were well settled, planning to give Lady Marion a tour of the school the next day. Dumbledore watched Blake depart, a mix of concern and contemplation on his face. He harbored worries about Blake's unpredictable time traveling, but recognized the futility of dwelling on them at the moment. With a heavy heart, he made his way to the headmaster's office, pondering the support he could offer Blake. He resolved to seek advice from Nico Flamel, whose centuries of life experience might provide valuable insights. Meanwhile, Snape had made the decision to relocate from his underground classroom to the staff dormitory, directly across from Lady Marion's. He found himself learning the intricacies of preparing baby formula under Mrs. Marion's guidance. Despite the task's apparent tedium, Snape discovered a sense of joy he hadn't felt in a long time. With Nagini staying at Hogwarts to accompany Lady Marion, Blake returned to his solitary room on Wooming Island. Arriving at 4 in the morning, exhaustion overcame him. After spending nearly every waking hour on biological experiments for 2 straight nights, sleep had been a rare luxury. Thus, overwhelmed by fatigue, Blake had no energy to even glance at the Supreme Treasure Box and simply collapsed into bed. In that moment of vulnerability, Blake's levitating cloak stirred to life. Transforming into a sheet, it gently draped itself over him, offering comfort and warmth as he drifted into a much-needed slumber. Chapter 380. Alduin, the Devourer of Worlds. Snape, who had been dozing off at the table, immediately perked up at the sound of movement. His gaze shifted to little Lily, who was lying in her small bed. Mrs. Marianne had just finished changing Lily's wet diaper and was now preparing to feed her. "Milk," she announced. Snape quickly retrieved a bottle of warm milk from the nearby magical incubator. He couldn't help but think that his fellow Death Eaters would be astonished to see him taking orders from a Muggle with such compliance. Mrs. Marianne accepted the bottle with a grateful smile. "How are you holding up? Is it difficult?" she inquired. "It's manageable," Snape replied. He was accustomed to staying up all night to study potions, but watching over his child's health through the night was proving to be a different kind of challenge. Thankfully, the refreshing potion he had taken kept fatigue at bay. He admired Mrs. Marianne's calm demeanor. Despite her evident sleepiness, she never showed any signs of impatience. It was as if she were caring for her own child. Snape's initial bias against Mrs. Marianne, due to her being a Muggle, was slowly dissipating. He offered her a bottle of the refreshing potion. "Drink this, and you won't feel so sleepy." Mrs. Marianne gently declined, placing the potion on a nearby table. "Thank you, but there's no need to worry about me. Older people like myself don't require as much sleep." She then proceeded to teach Snape how to properly feed the baby, including how to gently pat Lily's back after feeding to prevent her from choking. Snape absorbed every instruction with utmost seriousness, even more so than when he studied dark arts or potions. Mrs. Marianne was pleased to see such a responsible attitude in a parent. "Professor Snape, you are truly a gentle soul," she remarked softly after putting Lily to sleep. Snape was taken aback by the compliment. Throughout his life, he had been labeled many things: lackey, scoundrel, genius, but never gentle. As sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating his face, he realized dawn had arrived. A knock on the door snapped him out of his reverie. Opening the door, he found Blake standing there with a tray in hand. Snape's protective instinct kicked in. "What are you doing here? Lily has just fallen asleep. Don't disturb her." Blake, taken aback by Snape's abruptness, retorted, "Why so tense? If she wakes, I can help soothe her back to sleep. Move aside. I've brought breakfast for Mrs. Marianne. She shouldn't go hungry. Snape, realizing his overreaction, reluctantly stepped aside. He couldn't let his pride get in the way of Mrs. Marianne's well-being. After breakfast, Blake escorted Mrs. Marianne on a tour of Hogwarts, leaving Snape to care for Lily. The magical world left a lasting impression on Mrs. Marianne, who was enchanted by everything she saw. Mrs. Marianne, please let Severus handle any tasks from now on. Don't overexert yourself, Blake advised as they returned to the dormitory. Severus? You mean Professor Snape? Mrs. Marianne corrected him gently. It's important to show respect for the professor. Calling him by his first name isn't appropriate. Professor Snape is a very gentle person, she added, emphasizing her earlier observation. Blake, caught off guard by her comment, nearly choked. Gentle? Ahem. Saliva dripped from Blake's mouth as he spoke. Okay. Then let's consider him gentle. Don't worry, we know each other very well. I call him Severus, and that's okay. You see, he also calls me Blake, not Green or anything. You might not know this, but I have a classmate named Harry Potter. Severus never calls him Harry, but Potter instead. Lady Marianne simply smiled and listened intently. Whatever Blake said, she found it both interesting and amusing. Anyway, don't overwork yourself. If there's something that needs to be done, just ask Severus. He wouldn't dare disobey you, Blake cautioned again. Don't worry, the last time you gave me that potion, the life extension potion, I felt decades younger, Lady Marianne said with a beaming smile. That potion is truly miraculous. 47. Mrs. Marianne felt a deep sense of relief knowing her children were grown and capable of caring for others. After escorting Mrs. Marianne back to her dormitory, Blake turned to Snape and said, Severus, you know, if you want to improve quickly, you need more practice, so you should take the initiative to do any work that needs doing. Don't wait for Mrs. Marianne to ask. Snape frowned. I understand. Let's hurry up then. It took him considerable effort to replace the phrase, go away, with let's go. He thought to himself, you must protect little Lily. Never let someone like Blake get too close. After Blake departed, Snape made his way directly to the room of requirement. He remembered he had several treasure chests yet to be opened. Blake entered a biological laboratory equipped with concealed magic. Then, he stepped into the mirror space for added security. Now, even Fawkes couldn't locate him. Sitting cross-legged, Blake took out a small bottle of lucky potion and drank it. He then focused his attention on the 3 treasure chests in the system space. He had already opened the other gold and silver chests. Only these 3 remained, 2 diamond chests and a supreme chest from Snape. For Blake, opening these chests was more about curiosity and fun than necessity. He wanted to see what interesting items he could find. As for items that could enhance his strength, he felt he had no need for them. His wishful wand alone made him nearly invincible. However, finding something that could extend life would be valuable. Blake hoped not only for a long life for himself, but also for those around him. The thought of outliving all his friends and relatives filled him with loneliness. System, open a diamond treasure chest, he commanded. Ding! The diamond treasure chest is being opened for the host. Ding! Congratulations to the host. You have obtained a diamond-level copy of Otherworld. Blake felt a twinge of disappointment. He had previously opened a diamond-level copy of Otherworld and found no challenge in it, given his wealth and capabilities. However, the prospect of discovering new animals and plants in Otherworld still held some appeal. He stored the copy of Otherworld in the system repository and turned his attention to the next diamond treasure chest. System, open another diamond treasure chest. Ding! The diamond treasure chest is being opened for the host. Ding! Congratulations to the host. You have obtained the Black Pearl. Blake scratched his head in confusion. The Black Pearl? He turned his hand over, and a glass bottle appeared in it. The bottle was half filled with water, and floating on the surface was a dark pirate ship. Damn it, it's really the Black Pearl. It appeared to be Captain Jack Sparrow's ship from Pirates of the Caribbean. Blake wondered about the usefulness of having a ship in a bottle. Shaking the glass bottle, the Black Pearl inside began to sway with the waves. He read the item description carefully and discovered that the Black Pearl could indeed be released into the sea. Once released, it would become a formidable vessel. At any moment, it could emerge from the sea, whether in this world or another. As long as there was a sea, it would appear. Moreover, its size could be adjusted at will. While it seemed impressive, Blake found it somewhat unexciting. After all, he wasn't a pirate. With the ability to open dimensional gates, there was no need for a boat. I think a yacht would be better, Blake mused, eyeing the somewhat unattractive black pearl encased in the bottle. Wait, can I transform it into a yacht? The thought sparked a renewed interest in him. Although the ship seemed impractical now, transforming it into a yacht opened up a realm of possibilities. Blake's mind wandered to the image of Professor Babbling in a swimsuit, and he was convinced the ship must be transformed. Considering the ship's ability to change size, Blake realized it could be useful for camping adventures. Instead of setting up a tent, they could simply enlarge the ship on land and spend the night aboard. And if the ship could sail the sea, why not make it fly? The idea excited Blake, but he decided to hold off on the transformation for the moment. His attention then shifted to the last treasure chest, the supreme treasure chest, which always seemed to dazzle him. System, open the supreme treasure box, Blake commanded. Ding! The supreme treasure box is being opened for the host, the system responded, followed by, Ding! Congratulations to the host for getting a dragon stone. Blake felt the weight in his hand change and looked down to see a palm-sized, pentagonal stone slab. Dragonstone? He wondered aloud, reading the instructions provided by the system. The Dragonstone could summon Alduin, the Devourer of Worlds, a formidable creature that was not yet tamed. To tame Alduin, Blake would have to defeat him in battle. However, if Blake were defeated, Alduin would consume the world he was summoned in before returning to his original world. Alduin? From the Elder Scrolls V? Blake was incredulous. The system's ability to conjure such a challenge amused yet concerned him. Despite his confidence, Blake knew better than to underestimate Alduin. Regretting the use of the Supreme Treasure Box on something so risky, Blake stored the Dragonstone in the system warehouse. His gaze then fell upon a diamond-level copy of Otherworld in the warehouse, sparking an idea. If he summoned Alduin in the Otherworld instance and failed, only the Otherworld would be devoured, leaving his world safe. Excited by this loophole, Blake felt invigorated. Defeating Alduin would be an incredible feat, far surpassing any previous challenge, and if he couldn't defeat Alduin, he could always retreat at Thea, knowing his world remained safe. Unsure of what the final boss in this Otherworld instance might be, Blake felt it couldn't be more daunting than his last Otherworld encounter. Hydra. The mere thought of manipulating events to witness Alduin clash with an unknown, formidable opponent was thrilling. The prospect of not just one, but 2 treasure chests made the idea even more enticing. This could be quite the spectacle, Blake mused, contemplating the perfect timing for his venture. However, he resolved to go alone this time, recognizing that not everyone was suited to enjoy such grand entertainment. After organizing his belongings, Blake concluded the somewhat tedious task of opening boxes. Upon returning to his room on Wooming Island, an unexpected visitor caught his attention. An owl hastily flew in, dropped a letter, and hurriedly exited, as if terrified of something within the room. The sight of smoke emanating from the envelope explained the owl's swift departure. A howler, Blake realized, a hint of amusement in his voice. With a flick of his wand, he enveloped the howler in a substance resembling water, which immediately subdued its volume. When the letter opened, the once deafening roar was reduced to a mere whisper. "Blake, have you lured Cassandra to your place again?" the letter accused in a hushed tone. "Though she won't admit it, I'm certain she's been seeking you out. She's only just returned. How could you?" Blake faced the howler from Mr. Worley with an expression of feigned innocence. It seemed Cassandra had been experimenting with her newly learned dimension gate, leading Mr. Worley to mistakenly believe she was visiting Blake. Left with no other option, Blake conjured a dimensional door in the adjacent space. Reaching through, he gently pulled a young girl in a green skirt towards him. Chapter 381, A Misunderstanding and a Soft Encounter. Blake was unexpectedly confronted with a howler, the magical world's equivalent of a shouting letter, identifying him as the culprit behind a recent incident. As Miss Worley was abruptly pulled aside by him, confusion marred her features. It wasn't until she realized that Blake was the one who had intervened that the situation began to make sense to her. Blake pointed at the howler, which continued to emit a barrage of curse words. Cassandra, noticing the commotion, displayed a mix of frustration and disbelief. "I've tried explaining it to Dad, but he refuses to believe me," she exclaimed. "How could he react this way? Do I need to report every outing to you now? No, I must confront him about this." Blake gently grasped Cassandra's arm, urging her to reconsider. "Wait, confronting him angrily won't solve anything. He's your father, and his worry stems from his concern for you." Cassandra sighed, her frustration evident. "I know, but I just wanted to enjoy some time out. I even informed him beforehand, yet he refuses to believe I was merely out for fun. He insists I was here to see you." Blake, feeling a mix of sadness and irritation, ran a hand through his not-yellow hair, puzzled by the unnecessary suspicion. "It's absurd to think I can't enjoy myself without causing a stir," Cassandra lamented, her discomfort growing. Having recently mastered the Dimension Gate spell, the allure of exploration was too tempting to resist. "Why not invite your mother along next time? If you both go out together, your father will have no grounds for complaint, and he can't argue if your mother accompanies you to see me," Blake suggested, offering a solution. Cassandra's eyes lit up with excitement. "That's a brilliant idea. Mom's usually free, and it's definitely safer to explore with her." Blake nodded in agreement. "It's always best to spend time with your parents when you can. Now that you have the means to travel easily, perhaps your father's dissatisfaction is simply a wish for you to spend more time at home." Gratitude spread across Cassandra's face. "Thank you, Blake. I'll take your advice. I should head back now." "Take care," Blake responded, waving her off before turning his attention back to the still ranting howler, puzzled by its lengthy tirade. Suddenly, he felt a soft presence pressing against him, followed by a gentle touch on his face. Turning in surprise, Blake only caught a glimpse of a green figure dashing through the dimensional door before it vanished. "I was careless and didn't dodge," he remarked, touching the mark left on his face, a mix of amusement and regret in his tone. "My reflexes used to be quicker. I would have embraced her before. Ahem, time to submit this mission." Agatha, meanwhile, was at the mission submission window, handing over a stack of completed commission papers to a house elf. The elf, recognizing her, inquired about the name of her organization, a question that put Agatha on edge, given the notorious reputation of Nocturne Alley. "Don't worry, Violet," the elf reassured, using Agatha's code name. "Black Bat and Fourth Natural Disaster have also submitted tasks recently. It seems you're all part of the same group, having completed 15 major commissions in just half a month without fail." Agatha, slightly taken aback, confirmed their affiliation. The elf, impressed by their efficiency and success rate, hinted at the significance of their achievements. "Completing tasks swiftly is commendable. Your organization's capability in handling such major commissions without a single failure has caught attention. So, you can imagine how powerful your organization must be," the client mused, a hint of intrigue in his voice. "I happen to have a significant commission on hand, and I need a robust organization to tackle it. Given your organization's reputed strength, would you be interested?" Agatha hesitated. A commission of this magnitude promised substantial rewards, and while part of her was tempted, she knew the reality of her organization was far from what was assumed. It was essentially a one-person operation, and without Blake, those previous commissions wouldn't have been completed so effortlessly. If Blake wasn't available, she doubted whether she and Snape could manage on their own. "I can't decide right now. I need to consult with my boss before making any commitments. You're not in a rush, are you?" Agatha decided to seek Blake's advice. "The person who sent me is eager to find a suitable candidate as soon as possible, but I suppose I can wait a bit longer," the client conceded. "Before you go, could you tell me the name of your organization?" Without thinking, Agatha blurted out, "Our organization is called the Fourth Natural Disaster." The house elf's eyes widened in recognition. "So, the individual codenamed the Fourth Natural Disaster, who registered here last time, is your boss?" "Yes," Agatha confirmed. "Very well," the house elf said, pushing several bags of money toward Agatha. "This is the payment for your previous commissions, minus the handling fees charged by Chaos Wish." Agatha collected the moneybags and left Chaos Wish, her mind buzzing with excitement. An idea struck her. Whether or not Blake agreed to take on this new commission, the fourth natural disaster could become a legitimate organization. With a boss as powerful as Blake, it was only fitting to have a formidable group behind him. Upon returning to the potion shop, Agatha borrowed some parchment from Ackerman, penned a letter to Blake, and sent it off with a borrowed owl. Meanwhile, Blake was discussing the opening of the zoo with Newt Scamander. "The zoo is set to open," Newt announced with a smile. "That's excellent news, Mr. Scamander," Blake responded, his mood lifted by the prospect. The zoo's opening had been delayed due to Sirius Black's escape from prison, but with Sirius still at large and no recent developments, the wizarding world was stirring with excitement once more, allowing for the zoo's inauguration. "You and your friends have been instrumental in making this happen," Newt remarked. Blake humbly replied, "You're too kind. We've merely been a bit of a nuisance." "Not at all," Newt countered, gesturing toward a peculiarly designed sightseeing car. "Without your creation of this indestructible sightseeing car, the Ministry of Magic would never have approved the zoo's opening." Blake smiled. "The Ministry would have approved regardless, thanks to certain connections. But indeed, we've taken every precaution to ensure the park's safety. All the creatures have been tamed and will not harm visitors. However, to ease public concerns, we've implemented numerous safety measures, much like those seen in Jurassic Park. And with Big Bear's assistance, the construction of the enclosures has progressed much faster," Newt added with a grin. "As long as you don't mind his appetite," Blake joked. "Not at all. He may eat a lot, but his work capacity far exceeds that of a fire dragon. A fire dragon sleeps after eating, but Big Bear can build 2 houses on a full stomach," Newt exclaimed, clearly impressed by the bear's contributions. "On average, a household consumes 1 barrel of mead and 5 barrels of fish. Although the fish requires grilling, it remains a cost-effective choice. His magic has improved rapidly recently, thanks to your guidance," Blake said, expressing his gratitude. "This is remarkable. He possesses great talent. Having been a magical zoologist for many years, I never imagined I'd one day teach a magical creature how to harness magic," Newt reflected with a sense of wonder. Since meeting Blake, he had encountered more novelties than he had in much of his lifetime, especially the magical creatures Blake had brought back from other worlds. Could you temporarily house Big Bear at the zoo to assist him? I'm still concerned about letting him roam freely outside," Blake mentioned, hesitant to expose Xiongda to the outside world just yet. In Blake's view, Xiongda was not yet sufficiently strong. With his current rail condition, it would be disastrous if someone uncovered his true identity and captured him for experimentation. "Of course," Newt agreed. "By the way, if he proves to be unruly, remind him that if he wishes to find a suitable partner, he must stay here and behave. Otherwise, he can forget about finding a mate in the future," Blake added with a hint of sternness. Meanwhile, Xiongda, who was nestled in a wooden house 500 meters away, holding a barrel of mead, suddenly sneezed loudly. Startled awake, he sat up and scratched his head in confusion. Oblivious to the conversation about him, he took another gulp from the barrel, then collapsed back onto the hay, quickly falling asleep again. Chapter 382, The Establishment of the Fourth Disaster. Newt appeared somewhat uneasy. The reason for his discomfort was clear. He had been confirmed as the director of the zoo. Indeed, there was no one more suited for the role than him. The employees, who were originally magizoologists, included many of Newt's fans and even his disciples. His appointment was met with universal approval. However, the sudden responsibility of such a significant position made Newt nervous. Although the role of director did not confine him to an office, which he loathed, it still represented a substantial responsibility. "Blake, what do you think we should set as our ticket prices?" Newt inquired, recognizing the importance of pricing. Setting the price too high could deter visitors, while setting it too low could undermine the zoo's financial viability. "I think the tickets should be affordable," Blake suggested. "For instance, 5 silver coins would be an ideal price." Newt, puzzled, asked, "Isn't that too low?" He recalled Blake mentioning that the zoo's revenue would be used to care for the magical creatures. The income from a month's worth of visitors might not even cover a month's food for a fire dragon. Mr. Scamander, I didn't mean that we'd only rely on admission fees, Blake clarified. The ticket price is merely for entry. What about the experiences we offer inside? Are we just going to let them wander around? Newt asked. Absolutely not, Blake exclaimed. We can enhance their experience with additional in-park activities. For example, we could offer close encounters with a chimera, including the opportunity to feed it. Observing a chimera up close could cost 5 galleons, and if visitors wish to feed it, they would need to purchase specially prepared meat from us. For instance, a piece of meat the size of a fist could be priced at 1 gold galleon. Of course, we'd have to limit the amount of meat each person can buy to ensure the chimera doesn't overeat. Newt was taken aback. Is this really acceptable? What about safety concerns? All activities would be conducted from the safety of our sightseeing vehicles. I doubt many would dare to step out and feed the chimera directly. They'd prefer to feed the chimera with their own hands, not become its meal, Blake reassured him. For less dangerous magical creatures, we could also arrange close encounters at a lower cost. Newt still seemed worried. But this approach, it feels like if visitors don't spend extra, they're missing out. What's the issue? We're not forcing anyone to spend more, and our entry fee is only 5 silver coins, Blake countered. In today's world, what can you do with 5 silver coins? Here, for the same amount, visitors can see a variety of magical creatures they've only read about in books. It's their choice if they want to enhance their experience with additional activities. Blake was confident that visitors would be tempted to try at least 1 or 2 of the extra offerings. His strategy cleverly played on human psychology. After understanding Blake's rationale, Newt looked at him with newfound respect. Blake, if you were in business, you'd be quite the, he trailed off, searching for the right word. Profiteer, right? Blake finished for him, with a wry smile. Newt could only respond with an awkward smile. I suppose there's no such thing as a completely benevolent businessman. But these ideas weren't mine alone. Blake spread his hands and continued, even Muggle amusement parks operate on similar principles. Newt sighed. While I'm familiar with magical creatures, business management is not my forte. It's not a problem. If you're unsure, we can always hire a professional to assist, Blake reassured him, highlighting the importance of leveraging expertise in areas outside one's own. Entrusting business operations to professionals, Newt realized, was the key to managing the magical zoo effectively. Have you established the rules and regulations yet? Asked Blake, highlighting an oversight in Newt's preparation for the zoo's opening. Embarrassed, Newt admitted that amidst the flurry of construction and preparations, drafting the foundational rules had slipped through the cracks. Blake's advice was simple, yet profound. You don't have to do all this work yourself. You're the boss, aren't you? This realization struck Newt with clarity. He understood that his role as director was not to micromanage, but to delegate tasks to those with the expertise he lacked. With newfound confidence, Newt decided to seek Dumbledore's assistance in finding trustworthy professionals, leveraging the headmaster's extensive network of talented former students. Meanwhile, Blake's conversation shifted towards a different venture as he met with Agatha at the mountaintop base. Agatha, eager to discuss the prospects of forming the 4th natural disaster, was assured by Blake that their ambitious plan was indeed feasible. However, when Agatha proposed recruiting members from her followers in Nocturne Alley, Blake expressed his reservations. He questioned the loyalty and strength of these dark wizards, suggesting that their allegiance was more out of fear than respect. Agatha, initially taken aback by Blake's skepticism, soon realized the importance of building a formidable and loyal organization. Blake emphasized that the issue wasn't just about loyalty, it was also about capability. The dark wizards of Nocturne Alley, while nefarious, lacked the power and skill necessary for the ambitious goals of the 4th natural disaster. This revelation prompted a re-evaluation of their recruitment strategy, underscoring the need for members who were not only loyal, but also strong enough to contribute meaningfully to their cause. Through these interactions, both Newt and Agatha learned valuable lessons about leadership, delegation, and the importance of surrounding oneself with competent and trustworthy individuals. As they moved forward with their respective projects, the guidance they received from Blake would undoubtedly shape their approach to achieving their ambitious goals. If you think they're just a bunch of amateurs, you're mistaken. In Blake's view, they indeed lack experience. After all, they can't even defeat their enemies when they band together. Agatha pondered over the dark wizards who shrank back at her sight, finding the thought suddenly dull. Feeling a bit disheartened by the rejection of her suggestion, she asked, "Then, what do you think we should be looking for?" Blake stood up, his words carefully chosen. "At the very least, I have to be as powerful as you to be qualified to join." He didn't say, "I can't be worse than you," but instead, "I have to be as good as you." This showed his consideration for Agatha's feelings, avoiding any implication that she was inadequate. Agatha's spirits lifted immediately upon hearing Blake's compliment. Those who value strength tend to see things more straightforwardly. "So, where are we going to find so many powerful individuals?" Agatha inquired, getting straight to the point. "It doesn't have to be many, Agatha," Blake replied earnestly. "Quality over quantity, but I do have a method to find quite a few." Agatha's excitement was palpable. "I'm looking forward to it now." The prospect of more powerful allies meant more opportunities for her to train and improve. However, she was no fool. She realized that if the new recruits were not weaker than her, she wouldn't be the one managing the organization. It was a matter of principle. One couldn't lead those of equal or greater strength. "So, who will you entrust to help manage the organization in your absence?" Agatha asked. "What do you think of Old Rip?" Blake suggested with a smile. Old Rip, the first to bestow upon Blake a power ring, possessed formidable strength, further amplified by the ring. His prowess was now comparable to Dumbledore's. With his vast experience, Blake believed Old Rip was the ideal candidate for leadership. Agatha was immediately convinced upon hearing Blake's plan to appoint Old Rip as his second-in-command, and she had been unable to defeat Old Rip in the past, and he seemed to have grown even stronger overnight. If anyone could command respect from the new members, it was him. "Okay, then it's settled. For now, the fourth disaster will consist of the three of us," Blake declared. "Okay." Agatha was far from disappointed. Knowing Blake's capabilities, she was confident in the bright future of the fourth disaster. "That old bat, won't he join?" Agatha suddenly asked, referring to someone specific. Blake knew she meant Severus Snape. "Severus has been busy with the baby recently, so he probably won't have time. We'll discuss it later." Blake was certain that Snape would eventually be drawn into their cause, especially since the birth of little Lily had tied him to Blake for life. "Milk baby?" Agatha was taken aback by the news, an image of Snape's stern face flashing through her mind. "I've tried very hard to imagine, but I can't picture what that old bat caring for a child looks like." "Well, indeed, it's quite the sight," Blake admitted, suppressing a chuckle at the thought of Snape's new role. After their conversation, they called Old Rip to discuss the formation of the organization. Given Old Rip's loyalty to Blake, he readily agreed to their plans. Once their discussion concluded, Blake departed, his interest piqued by a task from the leader of Chaos Wish. Blake understood that the essence of his task was not the seemingly generous rewards, but the challenge itself. To accept this request, he needed an organization with strength comparable to those documented in other records. Building such an organization required manpower, specifically, strong manpower. But where could one find a multitude of free, powerful individuals in this world? With this question in mind, Blake utilized a dimensional door to arrive directly at Nurmengard. Upon seeing Blake appear so suddenly, Grindelwald couldn't hide his surprise. Blake addressed him confidently. "I can offer numerous positions with easy work and attractive pay. Would you and your associates be interested?" Grindelwald, intrigued by the proposition, considered the welfare of his followers. These wizards, once powerful and feared, had faced hard times. Many had become fugitives or were forced into a life of crime after being defeated. Now, as Grindelwald regained prominence, his loyal followers had gathered at Nurmengard once more. Grindelwald had always sought to provide for them, arranging work and ensuring they were paid, despite the financial strain it placed on him. The offer from Blake presented a new opportunity. The prospect of employment with generous compensation was too good for Grindelwald to pass up, even if he had wanted to. The old wizards under his command were also eager for a change. The idea of venturing out and engaging in new activities was far more appealing than remaining in Nurmengard. Moreover, with Blake being Grindelwald's heir and having Grindelwald's endorsement, there was little reason for them to resist the call to action. Thus, with Blake's arrival at Nurmengard, the fourth natural disaster was born, a powerful organization bolstered by the addition of Grindelwald's loyal followers. Blake meticulously screened each new member, ensuring their unwavering loyalty. P.S. I am still recovering from my illness, and my father has fallen ill again, which has kept me very busy. Therefore, there will be only one chapter tonight. Chapter 383, Grindelwald's Condition. Your eldest son must bear my surname. Blake swiftly returned to the mountaintop base, aware that preparations were crucial before the arrival of the new recruits. The notion of well-compensated individuals having nowhere to reside and potentially sleeping on the streets was unacceptable to him. Agatha and Old Rip were taken aback by Blake's prompt return, puzzled if he had forgotten something. No, we need to be ready. Many people will be joining us soon. We must expedite the construction of staff dormitories in the open space behind the base, Blake explained. He had previously discussed with Agatha the idea of building dormitories for the employees at the mountaintop base. To his surprise, Agatha had no objections. In fact, she was quite pleased with the idea. Blake had anticipated some resistance, considering the location was her family's former residence and likely held sentimental value. However, Agatha's enthusiastic agreement was a relief. She was a vibrant and straightforward person who looked forward to the prospect of having many experts around to exchange ideas with. We need to construct a staff dormitory capable of housing hundreds of people within a week, Blake stated, setting a challenging goal. Old Rip, puzzled by the urgency, questioned, do we really need to rush this much? Their initial plan had been to recruit manpower gradually, given the difficulty in finding individuals with combat experience comparable to Agatha's. Blake responded with a hint of helplessness. Yes, we're in a hurry. I've already recruited someone. How many? Old Rip inquired, expecting a modest number. 115, Blake revealed. The number shocked Old Rip into standing. The morning's discussion had revolved around the challenges of recruitment, yet by the afternoon, Blake had managed to hire over 100 individuals. If these recruits met Blake's criteria, they were likely werewolves with combat experience akin to Agatha's. Blake had indeed approached Grindelwald for assistance, but the overwhelming response had taken him by surprise. He had modestly hoped for 17 or 18 recruits at best, considering the former Wiccan party members' dedication to their cause. The Ministry of Magic had attempted to bribe them in the past without success, so Blake's expectations had been low. Yet, Blake's offer had attracted hundreds of former witchcraft members, a testament to the appeal of his welfare package and the effectiveness of his careful screening. Grindelwald's involvement had been crucial. After Blake made his request, Grindelwald had summoned his followers and delivered a speech that ignited their fervor. Blake was unaware of the speech's content, but its impact was undeniable, as evidenced by the recruits' zealous expressions. Grindelwald had skillfully hinted at Blake's ambition, convincing the former Wiccan party members that Blake's organization was worth their commitment. Their fanaticism was so intense that Blake found no need for further persuasion. The system began to broadcast updates frantically due to the influx of new members. Only those genuinely eager to follow Blake received prompts from his system directory and group. Blake gratefully accepted this gift from Grindelwald, recording the names of the recruits in the system directory. Once included, they became unwaveringly loyal to Blake, transforming into ex-Wiccans dedicated to his cause. Unbeknownst to Grindelwald, his contribution had significantly bolstered Blake's ranks, setting the stage for the realization of Blake's vision. Blake had found himself in a peculiar situation. He had borrowed money but never intended to repay it. Yet, when he received an unexpected windfall, he had no choice but to agree to meet his creditors in Nurmengard a week later to settle his debts. The week's delay was purely due to his lack of preparation. Upon returning, Blake couldn't hide his excitement, despite his initial embarrassment. This time, he had chosen his recruits with discernment. thanks to his ability to see the true potential in people. He selected only those who shone with promise, with the weakest among them being as strong as Asha. The most powerful recruit was nearing the strength of Grindelwald himself, a testament to the fact that wizards grow more formidable with age. Agatha, too, had immense talent. She only lacked the years of experience her peers had. Agatha and Old Rep were astonished to learn that their newly formed organization had expanded so rapidly in just one afternoon. In their shock, they each donated 2 golden treasure chests to Blake. Then, they began to work urgently. Blake, not wanting to waste any time, spared no expense. He hired a professional construction team from the wizarding world, paying them hundreds of thousands of gold galleons without a second thought. The building must be taller, Blake demanded, and the rooms more spacious, he added. After receiving Blake's requests, the professional house designers presented their plans the very next morning. The construction team, equipped with the designs, arrived at the secluded mountaintop base via a magical door key. Agatha, meanwhile, had packed the necessary materials in a suitcase enchanted with an undetectable extension charm and sent them back through a vanishing cabinet. With all the materials and plans in place, the wizarding construction team, aided by magic, found building the structures a simple task. In just 3 days, 3 buildings that met Blake's specifications were erected atop the mountain. Though the buildings looked somewhat crooked, a characteristic difference in the wizarding world's architectural style, they were fully furnished and ready for occupancy. Blake was more than satisfied with the outcome, knowing well the capabilities of a magical construction team. While Blake busied himself with these preparations, Grindelwald was engaged in his own schemes. He was attempting to persuade Vida, a member of a unique party, to let him take Vida's place in Blake's team under the guise of a disguise. "Don't go. I'll pretend to be you and take your place," Grindelwald proposed, his approach lacking subtlety. Vida was less than pleased with the idea. The notion of Grindelwald, a wizard of his stature, resorting to such antics was, frankly, embarrassing. "This is not good," Vida muttered, aware that if Blake hadn't already listed these individuals in his directory, Grindelwald might have succeeded in his ruse. Unfortunately for Grindelwald, his loyalty to Blake, cemented by the system directory, made his request difficult to accept. However, Grindelwald's persistence left Vida with little choice but to reluctantly agree. After Vida departed, Grindelwald, with great interest, began to use a transformation spell to assume Vida's appearance. He then adjusted his levitation cloak, which transformed to complete his disguise. In mere moments, Grindelwald had transformed himself to look exactly like the old witch hunter he had just encountered. Standing before the mirror, he turned to Vida with a proud expression and asked, "Look, do I not perfectly resemble him? Do you think Blake will see through my disguise?" His imitation was so precise that even his tone and voice matched the old witch hunter's to a T. Vida, left with no choice, could only nod in agreement, albeit hesitantly. "It seems quite convincing. I doubt he'll recognize you." It was undeniable that Grindelwald possessed exceptional skills in human transformation, far surpassing the need for something as crude as Polyjuice Potion, which Crouch Jr. had relied on. However, unbeknownst to Grindelwald, as he reveled in his deception, he was already being betrayed by someone he least expected. After leaving the principal's office, the old voodoo man had secretly sent a letter to Blake, revealing Grindelwald's plans. It was a shocking turn of events, considering the man had been a loyal follower of Grindelwald for decades. Upon receiving the letter, Blake decided to ask the old Wiccan to stay in Nurmengard temporarily. He chose not to confront Grindelwald directly, seeing no need to play his cards so soon. After all, Grindelwald was not Dumbledore, and Blake felt no need to tread lightly around him. Moreover, exposing Grindelwald prematurely could also inadvertently reveal the old witch leader's sudden change of allegiance, a situation Blake preferred to avoid due to its complexity. 2 days later, Blake was ready. He opened a dimensional door from his mountaintop base directly to Nurmengard. Accompanied by Agatha, he stepped through the portal and arrived at the Nurmengard Stadium, where over 100 former members of Grindelwald's faction, now loyal to the Fifth Natural Disaster, had gathered. Grindelwald stood before them, his eyes narrowed in anticipation, with Vida, loyally by his side. Grindelwald's presence was a clear attempt to catch Blake off guard, planning to switch sides once everyone had passed through the dimensional gate. Blake noticed the old Wiccan standing at the back of the line, looking visibly disheartened at not being able to immediately prove his loyalty to his new leader. "Welcome, Blake," Grindelwald exclaimed, embracing Blake before he could object. "I'm so delighted. You've visited Nurmengard more times this month than in the past year." Blake's expression twitched as he quickly disengaged from the hug. "Actually, I had never been to Nurmengard before this month." Unfazed, Grindelwald continued, "Then my statement stands correct. It's all that old fool's fault." After criticizing Dumbledore's actions and policies, Grindelwald introduced Blake to the group of powerful wizards. "Take good care of them. I owe them a great deal," Grindelwald said softly. "Don't worry, they're with me now, and I'll ensure they never have to endure such hardships again," Blake assured him. Grindelwald seemed genuinely relieved. "I trust you, young man. After all, you've managed to outwit Grindelwald himself. Dumbledore had once expressed a desire for me to carry the Dumbledore surname." Grindelwald, upon hearing this, struggled with his emotions. His temper, once fiery, had mellowed with age. "It's not a significant issue, Blake. You are a unique child, already captivating hearts," he said, attempting to lighten the mood. "Therefore, it's only fair that your eldest son bears the Grindelwald name. After all, you're bound to have numerous partners in the future, right?" Grindelwald teased with a mischievous wink. Unlike in Chinese culture, where there's a strong emphasis on continuing the family lineage, Grindelwald, being a foreigner, didn't hold such beliefs. His irritation stemmed from Dumbledore's wish for Blake to adopt the Dumbledore surname. Determined, Grindelwald resolved to ensure at least one child would carry on his name. "If Dumbledore gets his way, then I must have my turn as well," he thought. "Professor Grindelwald, I'm only 13 years old," Blake interjected. "And what of it? When I was 13, Grindelwald began, only to be interrupted as Vita, who had been eagerly listening, saw Lorendevo swiftly change the subject. "What happened when you were 13? Blake inquired, turning to Zhao for answers. Grindelwald, caught off guard, touched his nose awkwardly. "Children, there are some things you're better off not knowing." "Are you referring to me as a child again?" Blake retorted, half in jest. "You should be cautious, and please, stop calling me Professor Grindelwald. Father will do," Grindelwald corrected with a hint of seriousness. "All right, Professor Grindelwald," Blake conceded, though not fully embracing the idea. "P.S. My father is currently hospitalized, and I am by his side. I apologize for any inconvenience caused by my using a mobile phone to write this chapter." Chapter 384, Grindelwald's Near Miss. Grindelwald was seething with frustration. Why wouldn't Blake acknowledge him as a father? He couldn't simply blame Blake for this reluctance. If a child refuses to acknowledge their parent, there must be a significant reason behind it. After much contemplation, Grindelwald could only come to one conclusion. It was all Dumbledore's fault. He was convinced that Dumbledore had somehow threatened Blake into denying their relationship. Despite Grindelwald's personal grievances, Blake remained considerate of his newfound siblings. Together, they approached a gathering of elderly wizards whose eyes sparkled with anticipation. Blake's heart raced, understanding the reason behind their eagerness. Grindelwald, on the other hand, remained indifferent to their stares, having encountered such expressions numerous times before. However, he was unaware that their excitement was not solely because of him. Blake addressed the assembly of old wizards with a simple command. "Everyone, it's time to go." With those words, he opened a large dimensional gate. The group proceeded in silence, each person stepping through the gate without further ado. Grindelwald watched anxiously. If Blake left without him, he would lose his chance to alter the course of events. Just as he was about to suggest that Blake go ahead, Blake turned to him and asked, "Professor, would you like to join us for some fun?" Caught off guard, Grindelwald stuttered, What would I do there?" Blake's question had nearly convinced him that his intentions had been discovered. Thankfully, it seemed to be a casual remark. "I am the headmaster of Nurmengard. If I leave, all the school's responsibilities will fall on Vita," Grindelwald explained, referring to the impending start of the school year and the extensive preparations required. "Vita," on the verge of tears, silently lamented the burden of these tasks. Blake feigned surprise. "I didn't expect you to be more diligent than Professor Dumbledore now." "According to Professor McGonagall, Professor Dumbledore spends his days fishing," Blake added, sparking a sense of pride in Grindelwald. "That's right. How can Dumbledore's diligence compare to mine? He occupies himself with trivial matters, unlike me, who focuses on practical tasks," Grindelwald boasted, basking in the unexpected praise. Blake gave him a thumbs up. "Diligent. Impressive." Grindelwald couldn't help but smile, reveling in the compliment, despite knowing it was a veiled mockery. Yet, coming from Blake and being compared favorably to Dumbledore, it felt different. As Grindelwald was lost in his moment of pride, Vita gently reminded him, "Professor, Blake and the others are heading home." Realizing he was about to miss his chance, Grindelwald saw that nearly everyone had already passed through the gate. Blake was long gone. In a desperate move, Grindelwald grabbed an old wizard at the end of the line, who had hoped to slip away unnoticed. With a resigned smile, the old wizard stepped aside, allowing Grindelwald to disguise himself and join the end of the queue, stepping through the dimensional gate. "Aha! I'm so excited! Finally, I don't have to stay cooped up in Nurmengard," Grindelwald exclaimed, blending into the group as they ventured through the gate, his spirits lifted by the prospect of adventure. Speaking with the gravitas of an aged wizard, the man ahead turned to face him. "Indeed, embarking on an adventure is far more exhilarating than languishing as a caretaker in Nurmengard," he remarked. Grindelwald, with a hint of trepidation, inquired, "What exactly does Master Blake require of us?" "Bart, were you not paying attention to Professor Grindelwald's words? It's wise to follow Blake's lead. Cease your questioning. All will be revealed in due course," chided Bart, the name belonging to the old witch hunter whose identity had been assumed. Grindelwald, of course, recognized his former subordinate. "Bolton, my excitement knows no bounds. How long have I yearned for freedom from Nurmengard's confines?" Bolton cast a suspicious glance at Grindelwald, who was masquerading as Bart. "Something about you seems amiss," Bolton observed. "What could possibly be wrong with me?" Grindelwald responded, taken aback by the comment. He pondered the precariousness of his disguise. Being exposed by Blake was one thing, but the humiliation of being unmasked by a former ally was a prospect he found particularly mortifying. Despite occasionally displaying a brazen attitude, Grindelwald was not devoid of shame. Regret washed over him as he reflected on his actions and words. Bolton scrutinized him further. "A moment ago, you seemed tense, yet now you're brimming with excitement. Have you overcome your constipation, or has it turned into diarrhea?" he prodded, seemingly in search of evidence of discomfort. Grindelwald bristled at the interrogation. "Constipation is merely a fleeting ailment, easily remedied with a magical potion. My joy stems from the opportunity to engage in meaningful tasks. However, I was concerned that my ill health might impede Master Blake's plans," he explained, though even he found his own justification unconvincing and repulsive. Just as Grindelwald contemplated discreetly casting a memory charm on Bolton, the latter nodded in apparent understanding. "Indeed, it would be remiss to hinder Master Blake's endeavors due to illness." "Allow me to discuss this with Master Blake on your behalf," Bolton said, hastening his pace toward Blake. Panic seized Grindelwald as he realized his blunder had inadvertently exposed a significant flaw in his facade. Resigned to his fate, he prepared to be left behind, preferring that to the risk of his true identity being revealed. However, to Grindelwald's surprise, Bolton returned shortly thereafter. "There's no need for you to stay behind. Master Blake is proficient in healing arts. He has provided this potion for your ailment. Drinking it should alleviate your constipation," Bolton said, offering a potion bottle. Reluctantly, Grindelwald accepted the potion, his spirits lifting at the prospect of continuing his subterfuge. Just as he was about to proceed, Burton interjected, "Bart, since Master Blake has graciously provided this potion, why not drink it now?" "Drink it now?" Grindelwald hesitated, realizing that refusal might arouse further suspicion. With a heavy heart, he understood that to maintain his guise, he had no choice but to comply. The magic potion designed to treat constipation doesn't necessarily lead to diarrhea, a fact that Grindelwald discovers firsthand as he takes a sip of the concoction, feeling a bit overwhelmed by its potency. Observing Grindelwald, a smile creeps onto Bolton's face. Exactly. I can't let my personal ailments hinder Master Blake's plans. Here's to a swift recovery. Burton's newfound loyalty to Blake is evident, sparking a hint of jealousy in Grindelwald. He couldn't help but wonder, wasn't he this enthusiastic about me before? Have I been lacking in some way recently? Or do they see something in Blake? Perhaps they believe Blake is capable of leading our revolution forward. Grindelwald was puzzled by the sudden shift in allegiance among his old subordinates towards Blake, leaving him to speculate about their motivations. Nonetheless, he found some comfort in the thought that his concerns about Blake's ability to rally the old guard were unfounded. Upon passing through the dimensional gate, the group of wizards finds themselves in front of 3 slightly askew buildings. This will be your new home. Each of you will have your own room, Blake announces before temporarily departing to handle other matters. The news of individual rooms sparks a lively buzz among the group, accustomed to cramped living conditions. The air fills with banter and relief at the prospect of personal space. From the roof of the central dormitory, Agatha watches the newcomers with a mix of awe and apprehension. Despite their age, she senses a formidable presence among them, likening them to a group of seasoned warriors rather than elderly men. Blake joins Aggie, Atha, inquiring about her impressions. Perfect, she responds with enthusiasm, recognizing the strategic advantage these veterans could bring. Yet, she also notes the necessity of a strong leader like Old Lep to keep them in check. As Blake oversees the room assignments, his thoughts turn to Old Lep, sensing his presence in a nearby house. Approaching the house, Blake is greeted by Old Lep, who appears suddenly, donned in a gray magic robe and a pointed hat, reminiscent of a famous wizard from another tale. Blake, amused by the resemblance, jests about Old Lep's outfit, likening him to Gandalf the Grey. Old Lep, unfamiliar with the reference, takes pride in his attire, revealing it to be a product of alchemy, indicative of the high regard in which Blake holds his followers, ensuring they are well compensated for their loyalty and service. This moment between Blake and Old Lep underscores the respect and camaraderie within their ranks, setting the stage for the challenges and adventures that lie ahead. Blake shook his head, a hint of amusement in his voice. The clothes you've crafted are indeed exquisite, but your alchemy creations, while powerful, are too understated. They lack the visibility of their beauty. It's only with such ostentatious styles that we can broadcast to everyone the message that those who align with us can afford such luxuries, he added, understanding the underlying intention. Old Rep was looking out for him in his own way. However, Old Rep was unaware of Blake's ace up his sleeve, the system directory, which had long since secured the loyalty of their group. This public display of wealth was unnecessary for Blake, but without the system directory, flaunting his strength in such a blatant manner would indeed be an effective strategy to win over people's hearts. Old Rep had plans to further flaunt his financial prowess, followed by a demonstration of their strength, perhaps by picking a few fights to solidify their dominance. The idea was simple. If respect wasn't given, it would be taken by force. He was concerned that without a show of strength, the group might become unruly and difficult to manage. Blake, however, had no plans to intervene. Despite the group's loyalty to him, ensuring their obedience to Old Rep would require a significant effort. His gaze drifted to Grindelwald, who was leisurely picking out a room, a slight smirk playing on Blake's lips. He wondered if Grindelwald would maintain his composure in the face of what was to come. P.S. I'm still in the hospital. My dad's blood vessels are a bit clogged. This chapter was typed on a mobile phone, so it might be a bit disorganized. Apologies for the mess. Chapter 385, The Allure of the Treasure Chest. The group dispersed to their respective rooms without any disputes over the assignments, thanks to Agatha's efficient distribution of keys. She was the first to return, joining Blake and Old Lep in the open space where they awaited the others. Soon, the new recruits, having settled in, gathered around Blake, ready for instructions. Grindelwald, having received a key to a room on the highest floor, was particularly pleased with his accommodation. The room not only offered a spectacular view, but also featured a small balcony, a detail that delighted him. From his elevated vantage point, He surveyed the mountaintop base with a sense of pride. Looking down at Blake, Grindelwald mused about the secrecy of their location. He doubted Dumbledore was aware of it. Otherwise, Blake wouldn't risk establishing their base here. This realization brought a smug smile to Grindelwald's face, convinced of his significance to Blake over Dumbledore. His contemplation was interrupted by a knock on the door, revealing old Bolton on the other side. Bolton casually mentioned he had swapped rooms to be across from Grindelwald, a move that puzzled him. Bolton's explanation was blunt. He deemed Grindelwald too weak and in need of supervision, a statement that left Grindelwald speechless and slightly offended. It was the first time he had been called weak, and though Bolton's demeanor was off-putting, his intentions seemed genuinely concerned. Bolton's critique didn't stop there. He mocked Grindelwald for his inability to remedy a simple case of constipation without Blake's assistance, questioning Blake's judgment in choosing him. Grindelwald, embarrassed by the mention of his fabricated excuse, had no retort. He recognized the validity in Bolton's harsh assessment. With nothing more to say, Grindelwald hurriedly prepared to join the others downstairs, eager to witness Blake's announcement. However, as he closed the door, his stomach betrayed him with a loud grumble, prompting an awkward smile towards Bolton before hastily retreating into his room. Bolton, unimpressed, muttered about Grindelwald's weakness as he walked away. Alone, Grindelwald's frustration turned to dismay when he realized the potion Blake had given him caused an unexpected side effect, diarrhea. Without hesitation, he resorted to magic to alleviate his discomfort, a reminder of his earlier embarrassment and a lesson in humility. Rushing directly to the restroom, he knew that Blake's potions and spells were notoriously unreliable. He couldn't have intentionally done this, he thought, bewildered. My disguise is impeccable. Even Vita couldn't recognize me. How could Blake have seen through it amidst such a crowd? As people streamed out from the staff dormitory, the gathering quickly swelled, with only Bart absent, attending to personal matters. Old Bart will be unavailable for a while, Burton informed Blake with a calm demeanor. Oh, did the potion take effect? Blake inquired, a mischievous smile playing on his lips. Yes, Burton replied, then hesitated before adding, It's quite unpleasant. As Burton spoke, a system notification chimed in. Ding! Depressed mood detected. Ding! Congratulations on receiving a golden treasure chest. Blake noted Burton's lack of distress, deducing the melancholy mood must be emanating from Grindelwald. With a snap of his fingers, Blake thought, the plan was a success. I'm not malevolent by nature, but the allure of a treasure chest is irresistible. A few more trips to the restroom for you means a significant reward for me. While Blake was lost in his scheming, Burton voiced his concerns. Master Blake, why choose him? He seems so frail. If the upcoming mission is fraught with danger, I fear old Bart might not withstand it. Perhaps it's best if he retires to pure Mengard, Blake suggested, his tone gentle. You truly are compassionate, Mr. Blake, Burton remarked, somewhat surprised by Blake's concern for his comrade's well-being. Despite finding the comment about Grindelwald's supposed weakness amusing, Blake appreciated Burton's intentions. He understood the concern was genuinely for the safety of their comrade. Mr. Burton, Mr. Bart is not as frail as you think. His strengths lie in areas different from yours, Blake reassured him, skirting around the truth of Grindelwald's identity. After all, revealing too much could jeopardize their plans. Burton nodded, a look of understanding dawning on him. He hadn't known old Bart well, but Blake's explanation shed new light on the matter. So, he's a special talent. A well-rounded team needs more than just fighters, Burton concluded, accepting Blake's explanation without further inquiry. Just then, Grindelwald, not wanting to miss Blake's address, hurried out, only to retreat back to the restroom with a grimace. Meanwhile, Blake, amused by the system's rewards, prepared to address the group. Contrary to Grindelwald's expectations, Blake's speech was brief and to the point. This is Old Lep. In my absence, he's in charge, Blake announced, stepping aside to let Old Lep take the lead. Old Lep stepped forward, ready to assume his new role, while Blake's strategy, leveraging the system's rewards and managing his team's dynamics, continued to unfold in unexpected ways. Dressed in an eye-catching outfit, Old Lep immediately captured the attention of the seasoned wizards gathered around. Their experienced eyes could easily discern the value of the magical equipment adorning his figure. "I understand you might be skeptical," Old Lep began, his voice tinged with confidence. "But if you're not convinced, you'll have to learn to be. After all, I was the first to stand by Master Blake's side. Just look at where I am now." He flaunted his gear with a flair, drawing envious gazes from the crowd. To these old wizards, gold galleons held little allure compared to the rare and powerful alchemical equipment Old Lep showcased. Veterans of countless battles, they knew all too well the difference such gear could make. In combat, a wizard without protective equipment must dodge even the simplest of spells, but those equipped with high-quality alchemy gear could stand their ground, relying on their magical attire to shield them. The best alchemical equipment could offer protection against a wide array of spells, and some pieces were even rumored to provide a defense against the deadly killing curse in critical moments. The envy was palpable as they eyed Old Lep's ensemble, understanding the immense advantage it provided. If not for Blake's presence, they might have been tempted to strip Old Lep of his valuable possessions on the spot, given that even his boots were of exceptional alchemical quality. Noticing their intense interest, Old Lep began to disrobe, magically removing his enchanted garments until they floated beside him, leaving him in nothing but a pair of thin garments and bare feet. "Do you want this?" he teased, repeating the question for emphasis. "If you do, come and take it, but only if you can defeat me." With that, he confidently picked up his wand, challenging the onlookers with a smirk. All eyes turned to Blake, who smiled and nodded, giving his silent approval. The atmosphere was charged with excitement as everyone contemplated the challenge. Despite the temptation to attack en masse, they opted for a more honorable approach, deciding to face Old Lep one-on-one for a chance to claim his prized equipment. "I'll do it," declared Bolton, stepping forward. There were no objections. It was clear to all that he was the strongest among them, a fact confirmed by Blake's approving gaze. The two opponents faced each other, the air thick with anticipation. Even before the duel began, the tension between them was palpable, a testament to their formidable abilities. Old Lep's confidence was not unfounded. He seemed to be on equal footing with Bolton in terms of presence alone. Bolton, however, was not as composed as he appeared. His back was drenched in sweat, and his expression was grave. He realized that Old Lep's casual stance hid a deceptive complexity. He seemed vulnerable, yet untouchable. Knowing he could not afford to hesitate, Bolton made the first move. The spells they cast collided with a resounding impact, and the outcome was immediately clear. Bolton's protective spell shattered, and he was sent flying backward. Yet when he regained his footing, he found himself unharmed. Across from him, Old Lep remained unfazed, his posture unchanged, as if the duel had been nothing more than a light exercise. In the face of Old Rip, defensive magic such as the iron armor curse proved ineffective. Bolton was at a loss as to how Old Rip had managed to block his spell. Admitting defeat, Bolton said, "I lost. I will follow your lead." As he attempted to blend back into the crowd, Old Rip complimented him. "You are also very strong, Bolton." With a smile, he pulled at his sleeve to reveal holes where Bolton's piercing spell had penetrated. "From now on, you will be my deputy," Old Rip declared. Bolton nodded in agreement. "I'm honored to serve." Old Rip then addressed the crowd. "Does anyone else wish to challenge me?" Despite knowing Old Rip's formidable strength, the ex-witch cult members eagerly stepped forward to test their skills against him. Their motivation was simple. They sought a worthy adversary. 10 minutes later, Old Rip remained undefeated, his smile unwavering. The former cultists looked up to him with newfound respect. Blake observed the entire ordeal from the sidelines, choosing not to intervene. He understood that strength commands respect, regardless of the setting. By establishing Old Rip's authority among the group, Blake ensured effective management in his absence. Allowing the cultists to challenge each other was the simplest solution. "Sorry I'm late," announced Old Bart, who was masquerading as Grindelwald, as he finally made his way downstairs, albeit looking a bit pale. Blake couldn't help but comment, "Mr. Bart, I'm glad you've overcome your constipation to join us again, though you seem a bit dehydrated. Here, have some pumpkin juice." Grindelwald eyed the pumpkin juice warily, his expression tense. After his recent ordeal, he was hesitant to accept anything from Blake. No need, I'm quite drained, he stammered, still feeling the after effects. P.S. I'll try to find time to continue writing tomorrow. Chapter 386. Can men and women ever just be friends? Drink, aren't you thirsty? Grindelwald was indeed parched. However, the pumpkin juice in question was offered by Blake, a gesture that was hard to refuse. Ahem, Master Blake, there's no need, really. I'm feeling quite well now. Thank you for your concern, Grindelwald politely declined. Don't worry, your discomfort is surely a thing of the past. Here, have some pumpkin juice to stay hydrated, Blake insisted, his offer drawing the attention of everyone present. Grindelwald found himself in a quandary. For those who idolized Blake, refusing his offer of pumpkin juice was unthinkable. To decline again would be socially awkward and might even raise suspicions. Thank you, then, Grindelwald said, accepting the juice and drinking it in one gulp. It was refreshing, yet he couldn't help but lament the potential aftermath, recalling the recent unfortunate incident that left him speechless and choked up. In the crowd, Bolton subtly nodded upon seeing Bart accept and drink the pumpkin juice. He had been suspicious when Bart initially refused the juice, almost convinced that Bart was an imposter. He was ready to act on his suspicion until he witnessed Bart accept the drink. This, to Bolton, confirmed the old man's respect for Master Blake. Observing Grindelwald's emotional reaction to the drink, he thought, look at him, so moved by Master Blake's gesture that he's nearly in tears. Okay, you should go and rest now, Blake suggested to old Bart, trying to contain his laughter at Grindelwald's slightly pained expression. He knew better than to betray his amusement. After all, the pumpkin juice was harmless this time. Grindelwald's treasure chest had been sufficiently plundered for the day, and there was no need for further mischief. Blake was not so cruel as to add laxatives without reason. Just as everyone is now convinced by Old Lep, Blake began, ready to wrap things up when Old Lep himself interrupted. What's the matter? Blake inquired. I've been reflecting on my dueling skills lately, Old Lep started, his eyes gleaming with a mischievous light. Given your prowess, Master Blake, I was hoping to test my abilities against yours to gauge my own strength. The crowd stirred at Old Lep's proposal, wondering if the old man was challenging Blake's authority. Mr. Rep, this seems inappropriate. Bolton was the first to voice his concern. They had all witnessed Old Lep's strength, but Blake, despite his exceptional talent, was still just a boy. How could he possibly stand a chance? Mr. Rep, we respect you, but this doesn't mean you can replace Master Blake, another person added, implying that even if Blake were to lose, it wouldn't change their allegiance. Old Rep, however, remained unfazed, his gaze fixed on Blake. Okay, I accept, Blake responded with a smile, surprising Bolton and others who were worried for him. Master Blake, are you sure? Bolton attempted to intervene. Don't worry, I'm actually quite strong, Blake reassured him, understanding Old Lep's intentions. This wasn't a challenge, but a means to solidify Blake's leadership. Old Lep knew of Blake's formidable strength, but not of how Blake had already won over the group with his leadership and strategic use of the system directory. By allowing Blake to defeat him in a duel, Old Lep was offering Blake an opportunity to further establish his authority. Grateful for Old Lep's gesture and eager for a challenge, Blake accepted the duel. After all, he was itching for a fight, and this was the perfect occasion to demonstrate his strength and secure his position among his followers. The tension in the air was palpable as Old Rep, now fully equipped in his alchemy gear, stood opposite Blake. Their previous casual stance had transformed into one of serious confrontation, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. The onlookers, initially skeptical of Old Rep's decision to don his equipment for the duel, were quickly silenced by his justification. You don't understand. Without Tess, I'd stand no chance, Old Rep explained with a wry smile, hinting at the intensity of the battle to come. Blake, feeling a mix of amusement and concern, couldn't help but reconsider his approach. The thought of unleashing his full power was tempting, yet the risk of causing serious harm to Old Rep, a colleague and friend, held him back. The dilemma was clear: how to strike a balance between demonstrating his strength and ensuring the safety of his opponent. As the duel commenced, the air around them seemed to thicken, a testament to the heightened power levels. Bolton, among the spectators, felt a wave of disbelief wash over him. The aura emanating from Old Rep was significantly more formidable than before, revealing that he had been holding back during their earlier encounter. This realization dampened Bolton's pride and filled him with concern for Blake. However, Blake remained unfazed. His calm demeanor and relaxed smile stood in stark contrast to the swirling vortex of magic power around them. It was as if the escalating tension and Old Rep's intimidating presence had no effect on him whatsoever. The clash that followed was nothing short of spectacular. Sparks flew as Blake's electric magic met with Old Rep's red light, weaving a tapestry of energy that forced the onlookers to retreat. The spectacle left everyone in awe, with Bolton and the others quickly realizing that Blake was the one exercising restraint. The turning point came when a hole appeared in Old Rep's once immaculate magic robe, a clear sign that Blake's magic had breached his defenses. The subsequent explosion of Old Rep's, the wizard who uses pages, and the destruction of his equipment underscored the disparity in their power levels. Defeated and disheveled, Old Rep conceded, humorously requesting to at least keep his dignity intact. The aftermath of the duel left him in a comical state, barely covered by a makeshift garment. Grindelwald, who had been observing from the sidelines, was particularly impressed, not by the humorous outcome, but by the display of strength from both participants. He was already aware of Blake's prowess, but Old Rep's performance, despite the defeat, suggested that his abilities were on par with those of legendary figures like Dumbledore. This encounter not only showcased the extraordinary talents within their ranks, but also hinted at the depth of power and potential for growth among them. The duel, while entertaining, served as a reminder of the strength and resilience required to navigate the challenges and adversaries they would undoubtedly face in the future. Grindelwald felt a wave of relief wash over him. With Dumbledore present, even if Blake were merely an ordinary wizard, the organization would still run smoothly under his protection. The victory over Old Lep brought cheers from everyone around. They had struggled against Old Lep's formidable defenses, unable to land a single blow, so Blake's triumph was a welcome sight. Their cheers were a mix of relief and jubilation. Old Lep, understanding that his defeat had served its purpose, didn't take the loss to heart. When Blake, with a flick of his wand, clothed him in a new robe, replacing the tattered rags, Old Lep couldn't hide his delight. Blake's offer to provide him with a new set of alchemy equipment, crafted by Blake himself, was an unexpected boon. Old Lep knew the value of such a gift, given Blake's prowess in alchemy. Blake then turned his attention to the tasks at hand, mentioning the commission Agatha had spoken of, and reminding Old Lep to keep their allies engaged with meaningful work. Old Lep, buoyed by the promise of new equipment, eagerly agreed. Meanwhile, the Worley family was embroiled in their own drama. Mr. Worley expressed his concerns about Blake's influence on Cassandra, fearing his daughter was becoming too involved with a young man he deemed irresponsible. Despite his warnings, Cassandra seemed indifferent, focusing instead on her chores and effectively tuning out her father's complaints. Mrs. Worley attempted to mediate, pointing out that Blake had been nothing but helpful to their family, teaching them valuable magic and even taking them on a trip using teleportation magic. She tried to reassure her husband that Blake and Cassandra were just friends, but Mr. Worley remained unconvinced, arguing that men and women couldn't have purely platonic relationships. The argument took a humorous turn when Mrs. Worley pointed out Mr. Worley's hypocrisy, questioning his pure friendship with Mrs. Phils. Caught in his own logic, Mr. Worley struggled to defend himself, leading to a light-hearted moment that highlighted the family's dynamics and the complexities of their relationships with Blake. "Man, you actually hid it from me." "No, I haven't." The room was filled with a prolonged, exasperated sigh. "I didn't. You misunderstood," Mr. Worley lamented internally. His attempt at persuasion had not only failed miserably, but had also backfired, entangling him further in the misunderstanding. P.S. I've never missed my keyboard so much. Chapter 387. Cassandra, you've got the wrong script. Quickly, urged Mrs. Worley, her emerald eyes fixed intently on her husband. Please, don't rush me. I'm doing everything I can, Mr. Worley replied, his voice tinged with distress. With a sorrowful expression, he waved his wand, drawing out strands of white mist from his head. At this moment, he realized that asking his wife to review his memories was the only way to prove his innocence. To prevent any possibility of him altering his memories, Mrs. Worley watched him closely, her gaze unwavering. Finally, Mr. Worley captured the last wisp of mist into a glassed it to his wife, a look of despair on his face. The process of emergency memory recall had nearly driven him to the brink of a nervous breakdown. "You'd better not be lying to me," Mrs. Worley warned, her tone sharp. "How could I lie to you, my dear? Don't you trust me anymore?" "I trust you completely," Mr. Worley pleaded. "Enough! You've brought this upon yourself," Mrs. Worley snapped, turning her attention to Cassandra, who appeared slightly dazed. "Darling, take me home. I need to use the meditation disc there to examine these memories." "Okay," Cassandra responded, lifting her hand adorned with a ring and drawing a circle in the air. With a whoosh, a dimensional gate appeared, revealing a bedroom on the other side. Mrs. Worley stepped through the gate and hurried to a box beside the wardrobe, from which she retrieved a small meditation disc. "Darling, please come back to fetch me in 10 minutes, she instructed. "Okay," Cassandra replied, closing the dimensional gate. She then turned to her disheartened father, helping him to his feet. "Dad, Blake, Cassandra began, but her words trailed off. She bit her lip, her face turning red with the effort of holding back her emotions. Mr. Worley sighed. "I used to be powerless against your mother, and now it seems I'm powerless against you too." "Dad, why did you stay with Mom despite everything?" Cassandra asked, genuinely curious. She wasn't hoping for her parents to separate. She was simply puzzled. "If you find this life difficult and unhappy, why continue?" A proud smile replaced the gloom on Mr. Worley's face. "Unhappy? You might not understand, but sometimes having someone care for you is better than having no one at all. And your mother, she's extraordinary. I'm incredibly proud to have married her. How could I ever think of leaving her?" "You don't know how radiant she was back then. So many boys were vying for her attention," Mr. Worley exclaimed, his chest swelling with pride. "But she chose me. What more could I ask for?" Cassandra blinked, surprised. "Mom, had many boys around her before?" "Absolutely. She was brilliant and beautiful in school, attracting countless admirers," Mr. Worley confirmed. "And out of all those boys, she chose to be with you?" Cassandra probed further. "Well, that's not exactly," Mr. Worley stammered, embarrassed. He wanted to claim that his wife had eyes only for him, but he couldn't quite bring himself to boast. "The truth is, she didn't like me much at first, but then something happened," he admitted, not ready to divulge the details. "In any case, she was so remarkable back then, truly dazzling, surrounded by many friends." A look of fortune crossed Mr. Worley's face, as if he felt incredibly lucky to have won his wife's heart against all odds. "Dazzlingly excellent," Cassandra mused, her eyes thoughtful. "Yeah, Dad, I can understand." Mr. Worley suddenly felt a sense of foreboding. Sure enough, he heard Cassandra murmur, "Isn't Blake just too outstanding, almost blindingly so?" Mr. Worley's eyes widened in disbelief. He had intended to convey to Cassandra that she was exceptional, having inherited all of her mother's admirable qualities, perhaps even surpassing her. He wanted Cassandra to realize she didn't need to chase after boys. Instead, they should be the ones vying for her attention. Yet the conversation had taken an unexpected turn. His precious daughter seemed to have misunderstood his intentions entirely. Mr. Worley was speechless, caught in a mix of confusion and disbelief. With 2 weeks left before the start of school, the zoo was finally ready to open its doors. Thanks to Dumbledore's extensive connections, the staffing issue was swiftly resolved for Newt. As the director, Newt found himself relieved of administrative duties, leaving them to capable professionals. This allowed him to focus on his passion for magical creatures, leading a leisurely life akin to semi-retirement. The zoo's opening was highly anticipated, thanks to promotional efforts by both the Daily Prophet and the Quibbler. They published captivating photos of the magical beasts, sparking widespread interest. On opening day, the zoo was overwhelmed with visitors eager for unique experiences, such as hand-feeding a chimera, flying on a fire dragon, or watching a horned camel race. The queue to enter stretched for kilometers, a testament to the public's excitement. The zoo was strategically located at a port in the west of England, surrounded by enchantments to keep it hidden from muggles. Visitors purchased tickets at the gate before boarding an enchanted cruise ship to the mysterious island. Blake had invested in the development of a new wizarding town around the port, which featured shops selling magical animal merchandise, theme hotels, pubs, restaurants, cafes, and candy shops. These establishments, all owned by Blake, benefited immensely from the zoo's popularity, making Blake incredibly wealthy almost overnight. The sudden influx of visitors led to an unusual sight: wizards setting up tents around the town, reminiscent of the World Cup camping area. To maintain secrecy from muggles, the Ministry of Magic imposed a temporary ban on camping in the vicinity. When Newt reviewed the zoo's profits for the first time, he was astounded. 100,000 gold galleons? I thought 1,000 gold galleons a week would be sufficient, he exclaimed, unable to believe the figures before him. The revenue far exceeded his expectations, leaving him in shock. This was just from the zoo. The earnings from the town Blake had developed were likely even more substantial. That's not an exaggeration at all, Mr. Scamander, a bespectacled young wizard confirmed, holding the ledger. Just the fire dragon rides around the island bring in 500 gold galleons each. Many wealthy wizards relish this experience. The big black dragon is nearly worn out, Newt remarked, overwhelmed by the zoo's success. He realized that financial concerns for the care of the magical creatures were a thing of the past. Blake's idea is truly brilliant, Newt mused. Using the profits from the magical animals to sustain them is nothing short of genius. Meanwhile, Blake, the mastermind behind it all, was unconcerned with the financial windfall. He was enjoying a visit to the unnamed island with his friends. "Ginny, are you enjoying yourself?" he asked. "Yeah, it's so exciting," Ginny responded, her enthusiasm matching the magical adventure they were experiencing. Ginny Weasley had just dismounted from the back of a fire dragon, her excitement palpable. She had always loved flying, but this was her first experience soaring on a fire dragon. This unique adventure was made possible thanks to Blake's invitation to the Weasley family. Given their financial constraints, purchasing a ticket for each family member, even at 5 silver sickles, was a stretch. However, as invited friends, they were granted free access to try out the attractions. Even Harry Potter, who was staying with the Weasleys, had the opportunity to interact with hippogriffs ahead of time. Meanwhile, Blake and an enthusiastic Mr. Weasley were deep in conversation about the wonders of the Muggle world, including how electricity, akin to magic for Muggles, powered their devices. Not far from this lively discussion, Cassandra and Hermione Granger stood together under a tree, exchanging a more serious conversation. "Why did you ask me to meet you here?" Hermione inquired, her tone laced with caution. She had planned a simple day at the zoo with her parents, not expecting to encounter Cassandra. Cassandra, standing alone, had beckoned Hermione over to the secluded spot beneath the tree. The absence of magical creatures meant fewer tourists and a perfect setting for a private conversation. "I wanted to tell you something important," Cassandra began, her gaze shifting away from Blake to meet Hermione's. After a moment of hesitation, she confessed, "I like Blake." The revelation caused Cassandra's cheeks to flush with color, and Hermione's eyes widened in surprise. Why are you telling me this?" she stammered. "Because, at Hogwarts, I see you as my biggest rival," Cassandra admitted, her voice gaining confidence as she shared her feelings. "I recently learned something from my father. If you don't fight for what you want, miracles won't happen," she quickly added. "That's not something my father actually said." Hermione, puzzled and concerned, pressed for clarity. "What are you trying to say?" Cassandra's determination shone through. "I remember you saying he'll grow up eventually, so there's no need to rush. But I can't wait. Instead of hoping he'll notice me, I've decided to take action." Hermione, taken aback by Cassandra's newfound resolve, could only listen as she continued. "Do you like him?" Cassandra asked directly. Caught off guard, Hermione denied it, her cheeks coloring. I don't." "Then he's mine," Cassandra declared, making her way toward Blake with a confident stride. Hermione, acting on impulse, reached out to stop her. "What are you planning to do?" she asked, her voice tinged with alarm. Cassandra, undeterred, flashed a confident smile. "I'm going to tell him how I feel." "You're crazy," Hermione exclaimed, her emotions getting the better of her. If you don't like him, why stop me? You're not my rival in love, Cassandra countered, her logic unassailable. Hermione, struggling with her own feelings, finally admitted, I like him too. Then let's both confess our feelings and see whom he chooses, Cassandra suggested, her smile unwavering. Despite Hermione's protests, Cassandra's boldness forced her to confront her own emotions. What if he doesn't choose either of us? Hermione ventured, her voice softening. Cassandra paused, her confidence momentarily shaken. Why assume he can only choose one? Are we not better than the rest? The question lingered, prompting Cassandra to propose a daring wager, her eyes gleaming with mischief. How about we make a bet? Chapter 388. Your first kiss was with me, Cassandra. What are you proposing we bet on? Hermione inquired, taking another deep breath. She was caught off guard by Cassandra's sudden challenge today. Although the reason behind Cassandra's provocation was unclear, Hermione knew she had to face it head-on. Are you daring me to confess my feelings to him alongside you? Cassandra's eyes sparkled with determination. Hermione, momentarily taken aback by Cassandra's confidence, hesitated. The idea seemed daunting, but perhaps with enough mental preparation, she could muster the courage. Before Hermione could even begin to mentally prepare herself, Cassandra pressed on. I dare you. Seeing Hermione's silence, Cassandra's smile widened. Hermione's expression turned grave. It was clear Cassandra had been plotting, though her intentions were not malicious. Still, without understanding Cassandra's motives, Hermione chose to proceed with caution. The bet I propose, Cassandra began, drawing attention to herself with a dramatic gesture, is that I will confess my love to Blake. If he rejects me, I will back off and never pursue him again. But if he doesn't reject me, Cassandra's eyes gleamed with a challenge, then you must promise to stay away from him. How does that sound? Despite her mental preparation, Hermione couldn't hide her shock. How can you suggest such a thing? Cassandra cut her off. Why not? Granger, if he accepts me, then he's chosen me. Why would you continue to pursue him? Hermione shook her head, struggling to articulate her feelings. She had a gut feeling that Cassandra's intentions were not pure. Why are you hesitating? Cassandra continued. Eventually, someone will be by his side. It might be you, me, or perhaps neither of us. It could be anyone, his childhood friend from Ravenclaw, a girl he met in college, or even the Vila sisters from France. Enough. Hermione couldn't bear to listen any longer. Initially, she hadn't given much thought to her competition, but Cassandra's list made her realize the magnitude of her rivals. Do you see now? There are many of us, Cassandra remarked. But that's to be expected. Blake is extraordinary, attracting attention from many. Haven't you noticed how envious other girls are? What are you trying to say? Hermione demanded, her patience wearing thin. I'm saying there are too many contenders. I want to eliminate one today, you or me. So, what do you say, Gryffindor? Do you have the courage to take this bet? Cassandra eyed Hermione's modest attire, her gaze laced with scorn. Hermione felt a surge of anger. Was she doubting her own worth? No, her doubt lay with Blake. Could he truly reject Cassandra? Yet Cassandra's challenging look stirred an unfamiliar sense of insecurity within her. Fine, I accept your bet, Hermione declared. Excellent, Cassandra exclaimed, pulling out her wand. I discovered a method for making an unbreakable vow in a book at home. An unbreakable vow? Hermione was taken aback. She hadn't expected Cassandra to escalate their bet to such a serious level. Yes, an unbreakable vow, or a blood pact. Once made, anyone who breaks it will die, Cassandra explained with a hint of menace. Hermione was shocked. She knew Cassandra was determined, but she hadn't anticipated such extreme measures. Are you having second thoughts? It's not too late to back out. No, a blood pact it is, Hermione responded firmly. If Cassandra was intent on pushing her out, Hermione was equally resolved to stand her ground. She had never imagined their rivalry would reach such a critical point, but she was ready to face it. Cassandra, known for her radical ideas, found herself in a confrontation that demanded a response true to her Gryffindor spirit. Then, come on, she said, extending her left hand towards Hermione. Hermione, taking a deep breath, mirrored the action. As their hands clasped, several bloody and ferocious red lines appeared on their wrists, marking the intensity of their pact. Meanwhile, Blake sneezed, drawing Mr. W. Easley's attention and concern. Are you okay? Did you catch a cold? he asked. Blake, who had impressed Mr. Weasley with his extensive knowledge of the Muggle world, reassured him it was probably just a bit of pollen. Despite the mundane interaction, Blake couldn't shake off a feeling of unease, as if something ominous loomed on the horizon. His gaze wandered around the crowded zoo, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary, except for the unlikely sight of Cassandra and Hermione whispering together without him. It was well known that the two harbored a private disdain for each other. Cassandra handed Hermione a small device resembling a trumpet, explaining it was a toy capable of transmitting her voice within a 100-meter radius. This invention, crafted by Blake, was a testament to his ingenuity, surpassing even the Weasley twins' eavesdropping devices with its wireless capability. As Blake's attention drifted towards them, Cassandra quickly hid the device and approached him, leaving Hermione behind. Mr. Weasley, engrossed in a discussion about the use of gasoline versus electricity in cars, was interrupted by Cassandra's request for a moment alone with Blake. Understanding the situation, Mr. Weasley excused himself with a knowing smile. "Cassandra, you're here too today," Blake remarked, noticing Hermione's absence. Cassandra's response, filled with a mix of regret and determination, hinted at the complexity of their relationship. She confessed that their chances of friendship or even rivalry were complicated by Blake's presence. As Cassandra led Blake into the nearby woods, her boldness was palpable. Mr. Weasley, observing from a distance, couldn't help but smile at the unfolding drama, a reminder of the intensity and unpredictability of young emotions. This encounter between Cassandra, Hermione, and Blake, set against the backdrop of a seemingly ordinary day at the zoo, hinted at deeper tensions and alliances shaped by their unique personalities and the intricate dynamics of their relationships. In the bright light of day, Hermione found herself concealed behind a tree, her gaze fixed on Blake and Cassandra as they ventured deeper into the woods adjacent to the Bowtruckle's habitat. Despite the presence of tourists and staff nearby, the pair seemed enveloped in their own world, whispering to each other without disturbance. Cassandra, visibly nervous yet determined, finally mustered the courage to confess her feelings. "Blake, I like you," she stammered, her cheeks flushing with a deep red as the words left her lips, leaving her feeling utterly drained. From her hiding spot, Hermione's grip on the small speaker tightened, her knuckles turning white. She watched, heart sinking, as Blake responded with a smile. "Cassandra, I like you too." Cassandra's emerald green eyes sparkled with a mixture of joy, excitement, and shyness, while Hermione was overwhelmed with regret for not having the courage to express her own feelings like Cassandra had. Suddenly, Blake's heart skipped a beat as his system chimed in, detecting extreme emotions and rewarding him with a golden treasure chest for both the joy and sadness it sensed. Realizing the complexity of the situation, Blake understood that the sadness detected couldn't have been Cassandra's. Recalling the moments he had seen Cassandra and Hermione together, he quickly deduced that Hermione was the source of the sadness. Activating the Eye of Truth, Blake spotted Hermione trembling slightly behind a tree. He then clarified, "You are my friend. Of course, I like you. I also like Hermione, Harry, Cedric. I cherish all my friendships deeply." While he could have pursued a romantic relationship with Cassandra, Blake knew he had to make a choice. Yet he believed in embracing all his relationships fully, not just choosing one over the others. Cassandra's hopeful expression faltered, and Hermione, still hidden, was taken aback by Blake's words. However, she realized the game wasn't over yet. Cassandra, seeking clarity, pressed on. "No, Blake, the love I'm talking about isn't just friendship. It's the romantic kind of love. I love you, Blake." The atmosphere tensed once more. Blake, initially confused by Cassandra's fervent declaration, struggled to respond. After a moment of contemplation, he admitted, I don't know, Cassandra. I can't give you an answer now because I'm unsure if my feelings are those of friendship or something more." Cassandra observed Blake's turmoil, but a hopeful smile slowly returned to her face. She appreciated his honesty and the fact that he didn't outright reject her feelings. The situation remained unresolved, but it was clear that both Cassandra and Hermione's confessions had stirred something in Blake, leaving him to ponder the true nature of his feelings. Blake was left standing alone, disheveled by the wind, his mind racing. "What the hell? What just happened?" You lost, Hermione said, glaring at Cassandra with fury. She had witnessed the entire scene unfold. This woman had dared to. No, Granger, you're the one who lost, Cassandra retorted with a sly smile. How could I possibly lose? Blake clearly didn't accept your confession. Hermione protested, but he'd reject me either, Cassandra countered, her smile widening. Have you forgotten our wager? As long as he doesn't reject me, you lose. Now, he's asked for time to think it over, which isn't a rejection. Hermione was taken aback. You planned this? Indeed, I did. I anticipated that Blake would seek to buy time. It's a valuable lesson I learned from my father, Cassandra revealed, her tone dripping with triumph. You walked right into my trap. It's over, Granger. You've been outmaneuvered, Cassandra declared, a hint of malice in her voice. As she spoke, several streaks of blood appeared on her left hand. The blood pact was sealed. She had used her understanding of Blake to outwit Hermione. Hermione felt as if she had been struck by lightning. She had been outplayed. You're despicable, Hermione managed to say, her voice a mixture of shock and disdain. Despicable? Cassandra's smile turned cold. Have you forgotten? I am from Slytherin. The exchange between Cassandra and Hermione highlighted not just a rivalry, but a deep understanding of strategy and manipulation. Cassandra's actions, though questionable, were calculated and played upon the weaknesses and expectations of those around her. Her victory was not just over Hermione, but a demonstration of her cunning and resourcefulness, traits that were often celebrated in Slytherin. Chapter 389. Blake, only children make choices. I want them all. I was careless. I didn't dodge, but something felt off. Blake wiped his mouth, clearing his throat. Ahem, don't let yourself be deceived by sweet words. Cassandra's behavior today was alarmingly unusual, and it finally made Blake cautious. Initially, when Blake had kissed her cheek and inquired about her feelings for him, she had consistently denied any affection. So, why the sudden change today? Her advances were so bold that even Blake felt slightly overwhelmed. Even if, for argument's sake, she had an epiphany about her feelings, wouldn't it have been more sensible to find a private moment away from prying eyes? If Blake were in Cassandra's shoes, he would have chosen a secluded spot, far from anyone's notice. Given Cassandra's mastery over the Dimension Gate, finding such a place would have been trivial for her. Yet, Cassandra chose to make her move publicly, even in front of Mr. Weasley. Moreover, why involve Hermione in her confession? Was it merely to provoke a reaction? Blake pondered over the situation, realizing that he hadn't been the one to initiate their recent encounter. If Cassandra's aim was solely to provoke Hermione, the impact would be fleeting at best. The effort seemed disproportionate to the reward, especially since he hadn't reciprocated her confession. Yet she remained unfazed. This discrepancy suggested that the apparent outcome wasn't her true objective. After her sneak attack, she had achieved what she really wanted. Blake stroked his chin, deep in thought. So, what exactly did she gain from this? He looked around with his eyes of truth, only to find that Cassandra, along with Hermione and her family, had vanished, likely having used the Dimension Gate to leave. In a realm above, amidst a vast expanse of white clouds, a small mountain peak emerged like an isolated island. On this seemingly barren peak sat two finely crafted stone chairs. Hermione was seated on the right chair, silently gazing at the breathtaking sea of clouds before her. This was the spot Blake had brought her to previously, where they had sat together, lost in the view. But now she was alone. The stone coffee table Blake had fashioned on their last visit remained, devoid of the hot tea he had somehow procured then. Instead, a single, ancient-looking book lay upon it, its pages fluttering gently in the breeze, revealing the bold text on one page, The Unbreakable Vow Spell. Hermione continued to stare at the sea of clouds, her eyes gradually reddening. After venturing through the Dimension Gate to the restricted section of Hogwarts library to find this book, she was engulfed by despair. Cassandra's use of the Unbreakable Vow spell, though not yet a blood pact, was beyond Hermione's ability to counter. In essence, she was out of options. Her heart was heavy with regret, not for the bet with Cassandra, but for not having the courage Cassandra displayed in making it. If she had been the one to approach Blake, even if he had rejected her outright, perhaps she would feel less tormented now. Although it's summer, the mountaintop is still chilly. You should wear more, a familiar voice said, pulling Hermione from her thoughts. Blake had appeared beside her, aware of her presence. Seeing Blake, Hermione's eyes welled up further, and she felt an overwhelming urge to rush into his arms, even if it meant being pushed away immediately. As the thought crossed Hermione's mind, she felt an unexpected tightness in her left hand. Turning in shock, she saw several bloody chains materializing around her wrist, each link tightening ominously. As they constricted, Hermione felt her energy being drained, a terrifying premonition dawning on her. If this continued, she feared she would not survive much longer. With a final, desperate glance at Blake, she covered her left hand and vanished through a portal, leaving the mountaintop behind. Blake, witnessing the chains, immediately understood the gravity of the situation. The unbreakable vow spell, he murmured, realization dawning on him about what Cassandra had orchestrated. Cassandra had bound Hermione with an unbreakable vow, then cruelly banished her. Blake refrained from pursuing Hermione, knowing that any attempt to intervene would only cause her further harm due to the spell's relentless grip. He picked up a forbidden tome from the stone table, his fingers brushing against its aged pages. "Cassandra, you cunning witch," he muttered under his breath. Cassandra had not been concerned about Blake uncovering the unbreakable vow. She knew him well enough to predict his reactions, confident in her belief that Blake, caught in a dilemma, would ultimately choose not to abandon her. "If you're unwilling to make a choice, I'll do it for you," she had reasoned, secure in her manipulation. Suddenly, the room's oppressive atmosphere was shattered by sunlight streaming through the opened curtains, revealing a familiar figure at the window. Blake's presence seemed to radiate with the light, his calm demeanor stark against the room's previous gloom. Cassandra, caught off guard, stammered, You knew?" Her confidence wavered, the reality of confrontation melting her bravado like snow in sunlight. The thought of Blake rejecting her filled her with dread, her actions now seeming rash and excessive. Blake approached her, his movements deliberate. With a simple gesture, he locked the door, causing Cassandra's heart to skip a beat. Yet she stood her ground, determined to face whatever came next. She had gambled on Blake's affection, believing it would prevent him from turning her away, thus eliminating Hermione, her most formidable rival. Standing merely a foot away, Blake finally spoke. "Yes, I understand." His voice was calm, yet there was an intensity in his presence that Cassandra had never felt before. If Blake had once seemed approachable and light-hearted, he now exuded an aura of authority that was almost intimidating. Cassandra braced herself as Blake raised his hand, fearing a rebuke. Instead, he gently caressed her hair, his touch soft but his words firm. "I appreciate your feelings for me, but I cannot condone your methods," he said. "Hermione is my friend. You shouldn't have harmed her." Cassandra, emboldened by his touch yet chastened by his words, took a step closer. I didn't mean to harm her. I just wanted to keep her away from you. If she stayed away, she wouldn't be hurt," she explained, her voice a mix of defiance and desperation. Blake's response to Cassandra's justification remained measured, his stance on the matter clear. The complexity of their situation, entwined with magic, friendship, and misguided intentions, set the stage for a confrontation that would test the boundaries of their relationships and the true nature of their characters. Cassandra leaned her face against Blake's chest, her heart fluttering with anticipation. To her surprise and delight, Blake did not pull away. Instead, he gently lowered his hand from her hair to take her left hand in his. "Sometimes people's hearts get hurt, Cassandra," he said softly. "There won't be another time. Please remember, the people close to me are my limit, including you." Cassandra's heart soared at his words, mistakenly believing that Blake's relationship with Hermione had been exposed. She thought that if he was willing to reveal it, then Hermione, bound by an unbreakable vow, would be out of the picture for good. However, her joy was short-lived. Cassandra's smile froze as she felt a chilling sensation in her left hand. Looking down, she saw the bloody chains of the unbreakable vow spell dissolving before her eyes. How is this possible?" she stammered, disbelief etching her features. Blake had effortlessly broken the unbreakable vow spell. Blake casually tucked his wand back into his sleeve. "It's just me. Have you ever seen anything too difficult for me?" he asked with a smirk. Cassandra stared at her now unblemished left hand, her plans crumbling to dust. "I failed," she murmured, defeated. "No, you actually succeed. Dead. At least, in part," Blake corrected her, leaning in to capture her lips in a kiss that sent her senses reeling. It was one thing to initiate a kiss, but quite another to be taken by surprise. Yet, Cassandra found herself melting into the embrace, her hands moving from pressing against Blake's chest to wrapping around his waist. Meanwhile, Hermione, hidden away in her room and crying silently, felt a sharp pain in her left hand. The unbreakable vow spell that had been causing her so much distress vanished. How is this possible?" she whispered, a mix of shock and overwhelming relief flooding through her. She knew, deep down, that only Blake could have undone the spell. His brilliance and charisma made him seem almost untouchable. "Hermione, what's wrong?" her mother called from outside her room. "It's okay, Mom. I just bumped my foot accidentally," Hermione lied, her heart still racing from the revelation. Back with Blake, Cassandra leaned into his embrace, her breath heavy from their intense kiss. Blake, holding her gently, suddenly shared, "I actually wear 2 masks." Cassandra looked up into his face, noticing how the sunlight illuminated one half while shadows concealed the other. "I have many friends, from both sides of the spectrum, so my masks are also of 2 colors, black and white." Cassandra, intrigued, asked, "So, are you showing me your black mask now? Do you want to see it? Even if it means it can never turn white again?" Blake queried. Cassandra smiled, her resolve firm. "If you need me to be white, I'll be white. If you need me to be black, I'll be black." "You don't have to do this," Blake started. "I just want to know the real you," she insisted. After a moment, Blake said, "Okay, my true self is probably gray." "Then I'll be gray too," Cassandra declared, her enthusiasm shining as brightly as the sun. "You mean you'll follow whatever path I choose?" Blake asked. "Yes, even if you choose darkness, I'll stand by you," she affirmed. "You'll agree to anything I want?" Blake pressed. "That's right," Cassandra replied, her previous shyness replaced by a bold affection. Blake's smile turned mischievous. "Then I want a lot of girls." Cassandra's smile vanished, replaced by a look of betrayal. You scoundrel! How can you be so heartless?" "You called me a scoundrel. If I weren't, would I still be me?" Blake teased. Cassandra, frustrated yet hopelessly attached, retorted, "Then I must be the one you love the most." "I'm sorry, I can't promise that. I've always said only children make choices. I want them all," Blake replied, his tone playful yet firm. "You, scoundrel, you know how to push my buttons? Can't you even offer a word of comfort?" Cassandra exclaimed, her emotions a whirlwind of affection and indignation. "Who told you to be so mischievous?" Blake inquired, his voice laced with a mix of amusement and reprimand. Cassandra, her cheeks flushed with a mix of embarrassment and anticipation, bit her lip before responding. "Then, can you promise me something? Promise that my place in your heart, at least, ranks higher than Granger's." Taking another step forward, Blake closed the distance between them, now close enough to feel the warmth of Cassandra's breath. His eyes sparkled with a teasing glint as he replied, "Well, that depends on how you perform." Cassandra's heart raced, her voice barely above a whisper. What do you want from me?" "P.S. My father will be discharged from the hospital tomorrow, and I'll finally be able to return to my keyboard." Chapter 390, A Test of Strength and Loyalty. Anyone who errs must face consequences, and Cassandra was no exception. "Really? If I follow your instructions, you'll forgive me?" Cassandra's voice, weak and uncertain, emanated from the room. "Of course. You've already endured your punishment. Why wouldn't I forgive you?" came the reassuring reply. "Okay then, tell me, what do you need me to do?" "Wait, how can you, just wait a moment." Cassandra's voice trailed off, filled with a mix of confusion and anticipation. "Our leader has agreed to take on the task," announced Agatha, her presence once again gracing the house elf. This time, however, her confidence was palpable, bolstered by the undeniable strength of the fourth natural disaster, a force no longer just a figment of imagination, but a formidable reality. "Ah, that's wonderful!" The elf quickly presented a piece of parchment, which Agatha initially mistook for a magical contract. However, she soon realized it was, in fact, a commission paper. "Is this the task you want us to undertake this time?" Agatha inquired, her surprise evident. She had expected some form of verification of their capabilities, not such straightforwardness. "Yes, but it's not quite that simple," the elf replied with a shrug. Agatha's annoyance grew. She disliked vague answers. "This commission is indeed for your organization," the elf clarified. "However, it's not the task we originally intended for you. This is, in essence, a test, Miss Violet. Only upon successful completion of this task will your organization be deemed worthy of the more significant commission my master has proposed. If you doubt your strength, I'd advise against accepting. We cannot entrust my master's task to those unproven," the elf added. Agatha nodded, understanding the caution. "I was wondering about the quick trust." Without hesitation, she accepted the commission. With over 100 formidable ex-Wu Kui party members under her command, declining such a test was unthinkable. The thought of facing their collective disappointment spurred her decision. Meanwhile, Blake sat by the window in Cassandra's room, the warm glow of the sunset bathing him in light. Cassandra, comforted in his embrace, resembled a content Persian cat. "There's one more thing you need to do before your punishment is fully behind you," Blake murmured, gazing at the Worley Manor under the setting sun. "What?" Cassandra looked up abruptly, her expression shifting from calm to frantic. "Haven't I done everything you asked? How can there still be more?" Her voice was laced with distress. Blake's demands had been far from easy. Cassandra had exerted herself to the point of physical discomfort, yet here he was, asking for more. The thought alone brought a flush to her cheeks. "How much more must you torment me before you're satisfied?" she whimpered, her emerald eyes brimming with tears. With a gentle smile, Blake drew her closer, soothing her like one would a distressed animal. "This task is simple, something you're more than capable of, and frankly something you owe. You did cross a line, after all. But I promise, once you complete this, I'll share a secret with you, one that will change everything." "Really?" she asked, hope flickering in her gaze. "Absolutely," Blake affirmed. "All right," she agreed, her determination renewed. Old Lep, pipe in mouth, examined the commission paper Agatha had returned with. Dressed in a new set of gray robes, he looked every bit the part he had boasted about to his old comrades. Yet, under Blake's influence, everything had changed. The quality of Blake's creations far surpassed anything they had seen before, marking a new chapter for them all. The task of testing their strength seemed almost too straightforward. "A commission to explore ruins?" one of them mused, skepticism lacing his tone. "This hardly seems challenging. In fact, it's almost too easy." He wasn't wrong. In the dark and twisted alleys of Nocturne Alley, where danger lurked around every corner, a group of 40 or 50 could easily be assembled to tackle such a task. The typical dangers one might encounter in ruins, such as the Inferi, posed little threat to the seasoned dark wizards of Nocturne Alley. To them, these creatures were as harmless as a newborn baby. Thus, using such a mission to gauge their strength seemed almost laughable. If passing through these ruins was the only requirement, then surely half the organizations in Nocturne Alley would qualify. "When something seems too good to be true, it usually is," Old Lep remarked, puffing out a smoke ring thoughtfully. "Perhaps these ruins are different, more dangerous than we assume," Agatha suggested, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "That's a possibility. But we can't shy away from this test simply because it might be dangerous," Old Lep declared, his determination clear. His interest piqued by the commission, he decided to take matters into his own hands. "I'll go there myself. Oh, and I must bring old Bart along," he suddenly remembered, recalling Blake's instructions. Despite his reservations about old Bart, Blake's orders were clear. "I'll write to Blake and inform him of our plans," Agatha offered. "Good idea. He'd likely be interested in the ruins as well," Old Lep agreed, thinking of Blake's potential involvement. With Blake by their side, Agatha's fears about the unknown dangers they might face began to dissipate. After all, with Blake there, what was there to fear? Meanwhile, Hermione stood in shock as Cassandra, a woman who had exuded arrogance and confidence just that morning, now stood before her, offering a sincere apology. It was a complete turnaround, leaving Hermione bewildered. Cassandra's sudden appearance in her room, coupled with her earnest confession, was unexpected. Hermione knew that pride ran deep in both of them, making such an apology seem almost impossible. Yet, as Cassandra spoke, Hermione couldn't help but sense the genuine remorse in her words. "What are you trying to do?" Hermione asked warily, her past encounters with Cassandra's cunning leaving her on edge. "I know I've hurt you, and I don't expect forgiveness. I'm here simply to apologize," Cassandra explained, her tone earnest. Hermione's skepticism remained, her wand gripped tightly in her hand, ready for any deceit. Cassandra noticed Hermione's defensive stance and sighed. "I understand your distrust, but the unbreakable oath we made has been broken. I have no intention of plotting against you anymore," she assured her. Seeing that Hermione remained unconvinced, Cassandra decided to leave, opening a dimensional door to make her exit. "It seems apologizing to an enemy is a task better suited for Blake," she muttered to herself before disappearing. Hermione was left in the silence of her room, pondering the sincerity of Cassandra's apology and the unexpected turn of events. The dimension door, Hermione had not yet recovered from the shock. "Did she leave something in my room?" she wondered aloud, immediately beginning a thorough search of her room for anything out of the ordinary. Despite her efforts, she found nothing suspicious. Could it be that she genuinely came just to apologize? Hermione pondered, somewhat bewildered by the thought. Yes, she really did come to apologize. A voice suddenly chimed in, startling Hermione to the point of nearly screaming. Annoyed, she turned to find Blake standing in her room. Could you not announce yourself before appearing?" she scolded. Blake, unfazed, spread his hands in defense. "Back on Wooming Island, you never bothered with formalities before entering my room," he pointed out. Recalling her own past actions, Hermione felt a flush of embarrassment. "Did you invite that woman here?" she asked, changing the subject. "Yes," Blake replied earnestly. "She owed you an apology for her actions. I won't allow anyone to harm my friends, regardless of their intentions." Hermione glanced at Blake, her voice barely above a whisper. "You consider me a friend?" Blake remained silent, prompting Hermione to continue. "I overheard your conversation with Cassandra. You've been pretending all along. If it weren't for her sudden outburst, I might have believed you were genuinely clueless," Hermione added, frustration evident in her tone. Blake sighed, admitting to his act of feigned ignorance. "Oh, please leave. I need some time alone," Hermione said, turning away. The image of Cassandra kissing Blake haunted her every time she closed her eyes, stirring feelings she couldn't quite understand. Blake, however, refused to leave her side. "Do you know why I had to pretend?" he asked gently. "What else could it be? You find it amusing," Hermione snapped, her emotions getting the better of her. She sensed that Blake harbored feelings for both her and Cassandra, leaving him torn and unable to make a choice. The realization hit Hermione hard. If Blake couldn't reject Cassandra, did that mean he couldn't reject her either? The thought was daring, yet it lingered in her mind. "You're right, I can't deny it," Blake finally said, surprising Hermione with his candidness. "Now that you know, there's no point in hiding it. I like you, Hermione," Blake confessed, then quickly opened a dimensional door and vanished before she could respond. Left alone, Hermione was overwhelmed. He said he likes me?" she whispered to herself, trying to calm the storm of emotions within her. "No, Hermione. Stay rational. He might have said the same to Cassandra. But he told me directly that he liked me. That's different," she reasoned, only to remind herself to stay grounded. In the midst of her turmoil, Cassandra confronted Blake. "I heard everything you said to her," she accused, her tone a mix of anger and jealousy. Blake faced her calmly. "Then you know where my feelings truly lie," he said, addressing her accusation head-on. Cassandra, flustered, struck Blake on the shoulder. "You still said that!" she exclaimed, her cheeks burning. "But," Cassandra added with a mischievous grin, "you're so wicked. Telling her that before leaving, she won't be able to sleep tonight." Blake smiled back, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Don't be too pleased. You won't be able to sleep tonight either." Their exchange revealed a complex web of emotions and intentions, hinting at the deep connections and unresolved feelings among them. Cassandra's smile froze, and a flicker of fear crossed her face as she looked at Blake. What are you planning to do?" she stammered. Blake's expression softened, and he replied, "What's running through your mind? I simply meant that tonight. I intend to share some of my secrets with you. Remember? You agreed that after you fulfill my request, I would transform you into a gray." Note, I've finally arrived home and will take a rest. I'll try to update as much as possible tomorrow.